Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Spin a Yarn by SrirachaBunny. The Straw Hats find it a little weird that they don't have a first mate. Whenever they ask, Luffy just laughs and says they do, which is weirder because none of the crew have ever met this so-called first mate. A time travel AU in which a captain and his first mate go back to the very beginning and figures they can do more good apart than together. At least for now. Adios.
Zoro wakes up from a nap to the loud screeching of the samurai. He lost against Kaido. They cry. Kinemon brandishes a paper flyer in Zoro's face. This is a disaster. Grumbling, the swordsman rubs a knuckle against the corner of his eye, stifling a yawn behind his other hand. He takes the flyer from Kinemon's trembling fingers. So Luffy's in Udon prison? Momonosuke is sniffling, tears spilling over his cheeks as he leans against Nami's side, their navigator stroking his hair and shushing him. Kanjuro rubs Kinemon's back, whispering in his ear. Getting to his feet, Zoro grabs his swords and straps them to his haramaki. Wado is thrumming in her sheath, and Zoro does nothing to stop the grin it brings to his face. She has as little patience as he does for the Kanjuro's charades. Sees what he wouldn't give to be the one to get rid of the traitor right this instant. I'm off, he says instead, one hand resting on his swords, before he can entertain any further thoughts of somewhat premeditated murder. Kinemon wipes his snotty nose in the sleeve of his robes, blinks, and then gapes at Zoro standing in the doorway. Wabat Zoro dono. Where are you going? Momonosuke gives an even louder wail, burying his face in Nami's side. Robin, sitting next to him and Nami, smiles and nods her head. Zoro leans back against the crumbling doorway of Curry Castle, one silver eye resting on Kinemon. Luffy can take care of himself. He crosses his arms. The plan to attack during the fire festival is still on. We can't just sit around and mope, so I'm going to find us some weapons. The rest of you can go ahead and do whatever you want, but I'm not going to sit on my ass and wait for something to happen. Clearing his throat, Kinemon draws his knees up under himself and sits. His eyes are rimmed red, a drop of snot running from his nose. I suppose you are right, Zoro dono. But, will Luffy dono really be okay? He chews on his lower lip. Zoro laughs. The sound of it is a crack of thunder inside the broken and burnt castle. As if a prison has ever been able to hold Luffy. He'll be out when the time is right, don't worry about it. If Impel Down couldn't hold his captain, Udon prison doesn't stand a chance. See you around, and then Zoro is off. There are people he needs to meet, a sword meant for his hand, and a fellow first mate he has to fight. Ringo is where he found the weapon stash the last time, but, well, in the first week of asking for directions, Zoro hits the border of Udon. After that, he finds himself back in Curry. Then, he ends up in Hikumai. He isn't exactly making good time. Except, in Hikumai, his fortune turns around. On his second day of wandering the nearby area of Ebisu town, Zoro comes across a man with a wide smile, an upbeat attitude, and blue hair that snatches the air right out of the swordsman's lungs. He can't breathe. His chest is too tight, his vision is swimming, and he opens his mouth. Hey, he calls out. If I pay you, can you take me to Ringo? The man rubs his hands together, the wide smile on his face growing impossibly wider. Of course, young man. The name's Tonoyasu. And something in Zoro's chest loosens ever so slightly. Robin is the second person to take off, after Zoro. She slips out from Curry Castle in the middle of the night, dressed in Oiran robes and with blush high on her cheeks. It is as good of a disguise as she can get her hands on. Men rarely suspect women, as long as they flash them a smile and nod along to whatever deluded story of grandeur falls from their drunken mouths. It makes it easier to traverse the land of Wano, and once the Oiran houses no longer crop up, Robin cuts the hem of her robes and lets her pinned hair fall against her back. The layers and layers of makeup on her skin is finally scrubbed off. Whenever men approach her now, she smiles and cracks their fingers, elbows, shoulders. By the time she makes it to a desolate beach, she knows she is running dreadfully late for her appointment. A single figure is soaking their bare feet in the water on the shore, swan shoes in hand. "Mr. 2, calls Robin. "How delightful to see you. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know it's a bit far from Baltigo and Eva." "Nonsense, this'll be just as exciting as old times, Miss All Sunday." Bon Clay kisses the back of her hand. She stifles a laugh, but it does nothing to dim the joy in her eyes. Indeed. Except that if we fail, we won't be tossed to the bananawani this time. But they might disappoint Luffy, and that is somehow a much worse outcome than garnering Sir Crocodile's ire. "Where to?" He slaps a hand against his cheek, the face of Crocodile staring back at her. His visage looks almost naked, scars stretching over the bridge of his nose, but without a cigar in sight. An odd parody of a man that once held both of their lives in his hand. Pulling out a vivre card from her pocket, she points to the lush forest at the edge of the beach. "We'll meet up with Torao-kun shortly. I believe he went to a small village at Luffy's urging. His niece lives there, or so I've been told." Gasping, Bon Clay slaps his own face back in place. Grasping her wrist, he tugs her towards the direction of the crawling vivre cart at once, a near silent shriek leaving him. Perhaps it is the thought of meeting part of Luffy's family, even if the girl herself isn't aware of their connection yet, or maybe her dear Mr. 2 is simply that eager to meet the famed surgeon of death. "Oh, come my way." Spinning, dipping, crossing a river with a graceful jump, Robin follows along. The forest grows thicker around them. The bamboo, so thin and reedy at the edge of the beach, now towers over them and blocks out the sun above. The shade is a welcome thing, as Robin wipes another pearl of sweat from her forehead. Bon Clay stumbling into the footprint of what appears to belong to a large dinosaur or reptile. Not so much. "We're here." She offers a hand for the Okama to take. The village is small, almost quaint, if not for the displaced bits of wanton destruction cropping up. A smashed roof here, more disastrous footprints there. Raised mounds of dirt with scattered offerings of leaves, fresh bamboo shoots, and bundles of weaved straw. Graves, clearly marked and cared for by the few left behind. No birdsong accompanies their arrival, and no one comes out from the derelict huts to greet them either. "Torao-kun?" She keeps her voice level. A door creaks open on the far side of the village, and a man in a red mask steps out. "Who are you, Kaido's men? Be gone." His voice is rough, scratchy from years of either tortured screaming or public speaking. Perhaps a bit of both. He brandishes a sword in his hands, but in Getta's shoes the size of a small tree, he doesn't make it far. Another sword, with crosses embossed on her sheath and a hilt wrapped in fur, bonks the man on the head. The hand grabbing it is tattooed with death, and the face that it belongs to has bags upon bags beneath his eyes. "Stop being loud," says Trafalgar Law, stepping into the noonday sun. His robes match the usual aesthetic of the Heart Pirates, all dressed in burnt orange and yellow. Fighting back a yawn, he waves Robin and Bon Clay inside of the small hut behind them. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Robin yaw. "And I see you've brought company." The fact that Law doesn't bat an eye at the colorful Okama at Robin's heels is a sure sign that Luffy has indoctrinated him into the Straw Hat way of things. Which is to say, something along the lines of simply going with the flow and letting things happen. Bon Clay, Torao-kun. Torao-kun, Bon Clay. Robin introduces them once they take a seat inside. Law clicks his tongue and narrows his eyes at her. "It's Trafalgar." "Nice to meet you, Torao-chan." "Never mind." Over the course of the next few days, Robin in the mask is named Tengayama Hitetsu, and he has been taking care of Luffy's niece, Otama. Sometimes Robin brushes Otama's hair and tells her bedtime stories, in exchange for learning the intricate craft of weaving grass into hats. Jean Bart stitches her kimono back together, and the silk is a lot cooler on her skin in the clammy forest than she expected. Akaku, too, steals her for a girl's day out with Otama, and Robin begins donning her hair like an oiran and painting her lips every day. Paranoia keeps her sharp. If someone should find their way to this remote little village, she can claim to have been held captive by some dreadfully brutish pirates. When she tells Penguin and Saki that, they both burst into laughter, but dutifully help her with her intricate hairstyle each morning. Every night, for as long as they can keep the lamplight burning, she and Torao-kun make plans upon plans. Backups and maybe S, and what if S keep them up at night, even when Otama is snuffling and sighing in the corner as she jerks around in her sleep, pushing away her blanket. 3 days later, Bon Clay returns from a beach excursion with a group of Whitebeard pirates and a revolutionary. After Ace and Otama have finished crying in each other's arms, they settle in the small hut. It is awfully cramped, and Marco the Phoenix is kind enough to perch on top of a closet so that everyone can have a seat. Izu, out of all of them, looks the most horrified at the changes to his country. The gunslinger stares at Ace and Otama in the corner, at the meager offerings of food, and the destruction hidden behind a makeshift curtain of bamboo. Now that we're all present, I'd like to share what Torao-kun and I have been working on. Robin pours herself a cup of tea. The barley in the pot is on its 4th day of usage, and it is little more than hot water at this point. We have decided that continuing to spread the rumors of an attack on the fire festival, aided by the rebelling samurai, is the best course of action. This is due to one of the samurai, Kanjuro, currently feeding intel to Orochi and Kaido. By letting him pass the message along, and as pretending to go through with it, it will give us ample opportunity to mount an attack on both Onigashima Island and the current shogun's castle at the flower capital, at the same time. Wriggling around on the top of the closet, the thin pieces of wood groan and creak under Marco's weight as he scoots around for a better position to sit. I'm guessing that the actual plan to attack is not on the day of the fire festival. Law snorts, the back of his hand resting against Beppo sitting next to him. We'll attack 1 week before the fire festival. The signal to start heading for Onigashima will be Kanjuro's death. We don't know the exact interval that he provides Orochi with information, so as soon as his head hits the ground, we're on a time limit before the shogun finds out. Since we don't have a way of communicating a quick change in the scheduling, we can't use the rebelling samurai. Instead, we'll be going in with a small force. Having the rebels stay behind means they can help out at the flower capital, but they might struggle with Orochi by themselves. Smiling, Robin shakes her head. Not anymore. I asked Sanji for some help before we arrived. He contacted Pudding-chan, his pen pal and a highly skilled chocolatier, and if this is indeed her reply, she taps the folded piece of paper that Sabo had handed over earlier. Then Orochi won't be a problem. Although the plan I have in mind will require both Sabo-kun, Bon-chan, and Zoro to pull off a small miracle regarding Kazuki Hiyori. Law heaves a sigh, fingers rubbing against the bridge of his nose. Pudding? As in Charlotte Pudding? Of course Cook Yaw is pen pals with an emperor's daughter? But attempting to take over Onigashima Island with so few people is practically a suicide mission. Tengayama's mask is painted wood, but the frown in his words are clear. There is no way a small group, no matter how skilled, can deal with the sheer number of Kaido's forces. Actually, Robin sips her tea, a barely there hint of barley warm against the back of her throat. Our trump card for dealing with that is sitting right here with us. Huh? Ace scrunches his nose and rubs the back of his head. In his lap, Otama scrunches her nose in the exact same fashion. Robin gestures at Otama, and the little girl flushes a bright red. Me? She turns in Ace's lap, tiny hands slapping the Whitebeard commander right in the stomach. Does this mean I can join your crew? Am I already a cool ninja? Please, Ace, please. The puppy dog eyes that follow might have killed a lesser man. But Ace grew up with Luffy, and his resistance is solid steel. Absolutely not. But, no, he curls over Otama, hiding her from Robin's prying gaze. Had there not been so many strangers at their little meeting, she has no doubts he would have growled at her like some sort of Neanderthal. Her captain does it when Sanji cuts him off from midnight snacks, and she has heard Sabo grumble enough times around the base in Baltigo. It seems to run in the family. Yes, she says instead, blinking. Robin puts down her cup of tea. Its clay bottom makes a dull thump against the straw flooring. Otama, your devil fruit ability has the power to turn the tides in our favor. Distributing your millet dangos to Kaido's gifters before our attack, and then bringing you along to give them a command and bring them to our side will be of incredible value. Law nods, squinting in the low light. It would generate enough confusion between the lower-ranking pirates, and we'd gain a force without risking the lives of the rebelling samurai. Robin and I have already run the scenario a few times, and it's not a bad plan. It's a horrible plan. Ace's skin flushes. A dark, angry red crawls from his shoulders and up his neck. I barely let Luffy crawl around a junkyard by himself when he was 7. What makes you think I'll let Otama join a goddamn war? Sabo puts a hand on his brother's shoulder, and the temperature in the small hut falls. He glances at Robin. One eyelid just half a second slower than the other during every blink. Is it safe to assume that this strategy has already been tested? Ah, clever boy. Robin nods. I've been told the success rate is quite high. Glancing at his brother, the revolutionary jerks his head in Robin's direction, then aces. He wiggles the fingers on one of his hands, and ends the whole thing with a shrug. Robin can decipher none of it, but the frown on Ace's face gives way to a pinched expression. Oh, he says, blinking at Robin, then Sabo. In his lap, Otama glares up at him, her lower lip jutting out. Oh. Quirking an eyebrow, Law must come to the same conclusion as she does. Sabo has told Ace about her captain's time travel shenanigans. Wonderful, that should help smooth things over. Exhaling, Ace throws his hands up. Fine. Fine, but she stays with me the entire time, or she's not going. Okay. Pumping a celebratory fist in the air, Otama nearly punches him square in the jaw. The Whitebeard pirate jerks his head away just in time. Yay! I'm gonna be a pirate, or a ninja, or... The brewing tension in the hut evaporates. Otama's giddiness is contagious, and from the corner of her eye, Robin spots Law cracking a gentle smile in the child's direction. Said girl launches herself from Ace's lap and onto Beppo's belly, muffling a squeal as she shoves her face into the white fur. With that settled, she will have to send a letter to the minx. It would be dreadfully incompetent of her to not inform Inuarashi and Nekomamushi of the change in schedule. Robin yaw, I've been thinking. You mentioned Frankie Yaw has a few barrels of resin for coating ships stashed away on the Sunny, is that correct? Oh, she likes where this is going. Fully sadistic idea, Torao-kun. I'm sure Frankie will be happy to help. Cracking open the fan from her Oiran outfit, she hides a smile behind the painted strips of wood. Well then, says Law, grabbing a notebook and a pencil. Time to iron out the details. Let's figure out where all of our chess pieces need to go. At the behest of Kinemon, Jimbei finds himself at Mount Atama. Tracking down the remaining red scabbards is a time-consuming effort, and if he can recruit just one of them for their raid at Onigashima, Jimbei will count it as a win. Ashura Doji was the name Kinemon had uttered, forehead pressed against the ground as he bowed before the helmsman of the Straw Hat Pirates. Shutenmaru was the name Zoro had whispered to him before leaving Curry Castle. So Jimbei follows the trail of scared whispers through town after town. That brute, Shutenmaru. Say the women. Always giving us trouble, that damn Shutenmaru. Say the old men, puffing their pipes. Don't be mean, or Shutenmaru will come get you. Cry the children, slapping palms on their friends' backs in a game of tag. How a man like Shutenmaru, seemingly the bane of everyone's existence of both Wano natives and Kaido's crew alike, can possibly be one of the 9 red scabbards, Jimbei honestly has no idea. Their base of operations at Mount Atama doesn't strike him as the den of evil doers, but looks have been deceiving before. I've come to talk with your leader. Kinemon has sent me. He bellows, loud enough for the grass around his sandals to rustle. The mask over his face muffles the words slightly, but within a minute, a dozen thieves come charging at him. There isn't enough water for proper fishman karate, and he isn't aiming to put these people 6 feet under, so he gently puts them on their asses without so much as a flinch. I asked for your leader, not you small fry. Jimbei grabs one of the thieves by the front of his jacket and drags him up to his eye level. I just want to have a conversation with him. And here you have him. A man lumbers out of the shadows, a pink top knot on his head and a sword hanging by his side. If Kaido sent you, then tell him I have no interest in serving terrible men, and to stop using my dead friend's name to try and lure me out. Jimbei lets go of the struggling thief in his grip. He sits down, cross-legged, and gestures for the other man to take a seat on the ground. As a former warlord of the government, I know a thing or two about serving terrible men. As a friend of good old man Whitebeard, I also know what it is like to serve a kind man. Jimbei is getting up there in age, and by now he knows the face of a good man. Ashura Doji, with his knitted eyebrows and scowling face, is a good man. With or without you, my captain, Monkey D. Luffy. the 9 red scabbards, and some of Whitebeard's men will take down Kaido. The scabbards? They're alive. Jinbei nods. Ashura Doji casts a glance behind him at Mount Atama, and to his nosy people lurking just far enough away to appear polite and non-threatening. Sotoki's prophecy came true, huh? Then he laughs, loud and wet, and Jinbei knows that this samurai, despite being bruised from a loss that happened more than 2 decades ago, will pick up his sword once more in the name of his beloved daimyo, Kazuki Oden. Frankie is halfway through convincing an old geezer of a carpenter to take him in when Robin finds him. Her Oiran dress is as pretty as ever, despite the stitched threads of repair lining the bottom of it. The silk drapes around her body in a way that has the men on the construction site turning their heads and hammering at their own fingers by mistake. "Can I interest you in a good time?" Hugging him around the arm, Robin pulls at him until Frankie's feet follow along by sheer habit. The men behind him whistle and send him more than a dozen thumbs up as they disappear down an alley. "I know I'm a pervert, but I'm not that much of a pervert, pretty lady." Frankie winks, and Robin lets go of his arm with a giggle that might have turned his ears red, if they weren't already made of metal. She leans in close and throws a leg over Frankie's own. The wooden slats of the house behind them dig into the fleshy parts of his waist. It is sanded, and hopefully he won't be leaving with a butt full of splinters once Robin has stopped accosting him. If any regular pedestrian were to throw a glance down the barely lit alleyway, they might just turn their eyes back on the road and leave the two of them to it. A picture-perfect display of something just raunchy enough that any person with a shred of decency might look the other way, sporting red ears and a flush hidden beneath their damp collars. Running a hand through his hair, Robin's breath ghosts over the shell of his ear. Any progress with infiltrating the carpenters? Not enough. The old goat is stubborn and a menace, but he'll break eventually. They all do. He waggles his eyebrows, sliding a hand to her waist. "I'm sure he'll come around eventually. You have a tendency to grow on people." "Oh ho ho, is that so, speaking from experience?" She slaps him on the arm. The sound of it is loud in the quiet alleyway, drawn away from the hustle and bustle of the main street, but is a gentle thing. A twitch of Robin's lips belies her amusement, albeit she doesn't break into outright laughter. If you can manage it, work on coating Sunny, while still keeping up appearances with the other carpenters inside Flower Capital. Jinbei found one of the scabbards, and he has the blueprints for Kaido's mansion. "I like your fancy words, little lady, talk dirty to me. Torao-kun and I have an idea, and we would very much like to utilize your skills as a coatsman. Why storm Onigashima from the main gates when we can surprise them from around the back? Your wish is my command." "Good," says Robin, mouthing at the shell of his ear. It leaves behind a sticky patch in the same shape as her lips. His metal ear can't turn red, but a smear of red gloss catches in the dim light in a faux attempt at blushing. She presses her lips against his cheek for nary a second, a smile against his dull skin. Then she leaves as quickly as she came, with a flick of her hand and people craning their necks after her as she saunters down the busy street. Frankie's legs wobble. Maybe he should check the screws in his kneecap. The monk is still at the bridge. Large, imposing, and saying, "Neither of you shall pass," when Zoro and Tonoyasu wander up to him and ask for entry to Ringo. Instead, he swings his weapon, and this, too, is something Zoro has been yearning for. The heavy snowfall. The bite of steel against steel. Tonoyasu scrambling for cover. There is no one around to disturb their fight, and while Zoro might have been caught off guard the last time they encountered each other, he is more than ready now. He has lived through the loss of his crew, has put his life in his captain's hands again and again, and each swing of his sword is an extension of himself. It isn't easy, but Zoro knocks the monk's weapon from his hands. He drives Wado into the frozen ground beside the monk's head, sweat dripping down his chin and gasping for air. "Do you yield?" Each huff of breath comes out as a tiny cloud. "Well?" The monk says nothing, staring up at Zoro. His mouth opens, a wobble on his lips. "Shimotsuki Yushimaru?" Zoro raises an eyebrow and draws back, pulling Wado up. "I don't know who that is." "It's you. Look," the monk fumbles, words spilling out of him. Zoro waits, puts Wado back into her sheath, and waves for Tonoyasu to come out of hiding. "Fine," the monk settles on, huffing. I will take you where you need to go." Zoro doesn't stop to think that he never told the monk what he came to Ringo for. The monk takes both him and Tonoyasu on a vaguely familiar path. The structures all meld into one, but Zoro knows the shape of the armory as it looms ahead of them. "Good," he says, and has Tonoyasu put down the location on a map. There is no way he can make the trip back in good time while carrying all of these weapons. Sending a letter to Robin and Torao is without a doubt the smartest decision. "Can you take us back to the bridge? I need to get to the capital." To Hiyori. To Enma. And perhaps fate is twisted, and not without a sense of humor, because as soon as Zoro takes another step on that fated bridge on the border of Ringo, he is greeted by a familiar laugh. Not the warm, comforting shishishi of his captain, but the loud, deranged fow 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 of Kid's first mate. "Killer is here. So," says Zoro, staring at the man blocking their path, "you found me anyway." Killer simply laughs and laughs and laughs. Gritting his teeth, Zoro's jaw crackles and his ears pop. "Kaido will pay for this, too." In the short time that they knew each other before, Zoro enjoyed spending time with the other first mate. They had drank together, watching Torao, Luffy and Kid challenge one another to increasingly stupid contests amidst the party celebrating Wano's newfound freedom. They had shared eye rolls, laughs, and quite a few stories about their captains acting like idiots. To have Killer reduced to this incoherent mess of a human being, swinging his blades like they are tools and not part of his own being, Zoro's mouth tastes like ash, and Wado is in his hands before he knows it. Killer comes at him swinging. His mouth is gaping wide in a grotesque smile, his blades clinging to Zoro's skin and nipping at his sides, his ears, his face. He draws blood, a short steady trickle that stains the snow beneath their feet. Had Killer been of sound mind, Zoro might have struggled. But Killer isn't in his right mind, and that ugly, angry demon in his chest rears its head once more. This is his friend. This is someone Zoro has shared drinks with, laughed with, fought with. Zoro will drag him back from the brink of insanity by the root of his hair if that is what it takes. Asura, he puts Wado in his mouth, slides his feet out and breathes in. The snow is pelting down around them, and in the dim light, Zoro's 3 swords become 9, demonic 9 slashes. He strikes fast and hard, deep enough to draw blood, and Killer remains on his feet for a good 3 seconds after the attack hits. Then the man coughs, blood bubbling from his lips, foaming at the mouth. Killer falls to his knees in the snows of Ringo. Zoro huffs, puffs, and sheathes his swords. "Tonoyasu," he calls, and the man in question snaps to attention, eyes wide, smile still on his face. "Ah, why yes? Tie him up, we're taking him with us." Usopp hearkens his wares like a seasoned pro. He haggles and complains and gripes over both his own prices and his customer's audacity to lowball him. This is genuine toad oil. It can cure male baldness, promotes healthy muscle growth, and tastes like the gods themselves descended upon Wano and gave you a kiss on the forehead. All except nothing less than 3,000 belly, or highest bid, of course. They clamber around his small booth, the fake beard on his face nearly slipping from his skin in the sweltering heat. His pits are sweaty, his knees shaky, and by the end of each day, Usopp tallies together his money and comes up with another ridiculous product for the next day. Rinse, repeat. It is a bit silly, and every time Usopp packs up his bags or comes up with a new slogan, the words taste bitter in his mouth. Is this enough? He thinks, lying awake on a futon and tracing invisible shapes on the ceiling. Is this really all I can do? He ponders, as he rolls a wheelbarrow into the marketplace at the crack of dawn. He hands out flyers every once in a while, and his only returning customers are the ones with half-moon tattoos on their ankles. Thank you for your patronage. They bring back their friends, and they too bring back even more friends. As the days drag on, Usopp begins to drink with them. He shares lunch with them. He listens when they talk about the atrocities committed by the current shogun, Orochi. Robin finds him 3 weeks before the fire festival, and tells him that the samurai they have recruited won't be joining the fight with Kaido. They won't sail for Onigashima on the day of the fire festival. The rebelling samurai won't get to avenge their beloved Kazuki Oden and claim Kaido's head for themselves. Instead, they will be needed in the capital. So slowly, Usopp spreads the word amongst his new people. The rumor is still flying about an attack on the day of the fire festival, but when he hands out flyers now, Usopp also tells them, "Wait for a sign. The Kazuki clan will call for you." No more than that. Nothing that could jeopardize the plan. It spreads like wildfire. Soon, most of the people Usopp can spot in the capital, those with snow-kissed skin from Ringo, or a harsh tan from Kibi, all start wandering around the main street. Some nod their heads at him, and others draw closer, asking if they can buy him a beer if he is willing to share how his booth became such an overnight success with a glint in their eyes. He always takes them up on their offer, and soon they are all just waiting. What sign? Some of them beg him, but Usopp merely shakes his head. He doesn't know, but he has no fear that when the time is right for the Kazuki clan's return, the rebelling samurai in the capital will be there to assist. Toad oil, miracle toad oil, come buy it while it's fresh. Spreading the word isn't all that Usopp can do. He runs a hand over the smooth sea stone bullets in his pocket. They are a heavy weight to bear, but he knows that once they leave Wano, he will have one less bullet to make do with. He, too, is waiting for a sign. It will be his job to shoot the traitor, and when he does, the true raid on Onigashima will begin. Sanji's noodle stall is a blatant success. Of course, not that he was counting on it being anything but that, but the warm welcome that the wonderful women of the flower capital give him somehow still comes as a surprise to him. Keeping his head low and the noodle broth in his pots near scalding works for a while, he hands out flyers with nearly every second order, to both women and men who wear a half-moon tattoo on their ankles. Remember, if you refer a friend, you and your buddy will get 2 bowls for the price of 1 the next time you stop. It comes easy enough. The customer service skills that Zeph taught him had always been more along the lines of serve the asshole first, then kick him into the ground, but the smile he plasters on his face now comes to him as easy as breathing. It might be the fault of his customers. It doesn't matter if he serves a Yakuza thug, one of Kaido's ugly brutes, or a stunning beauty waving a dainty hand in his direction. They all fall to the taste of his cooking, moaning and crying as they slurp over a bowl of warm noodles despite the hot weather. The first person to have smiled at him like that, their mouths full of his food and coming back for seconds, had been his mother. And Reiju, once, only once, before Judge had found out. So call him a sentimental fool, but he stays up half the night and hand-makes dozens upon dozens of fresh noodles from scratch. Lets the stock simmer for hours despite it fogging up the windows of the humble, little abode he is currently calling his. It should be hard to procure the ingredients for it, but Robin must have her ways. Every morning there is fresh produce waiting outside the door of his apartment without fail. It continues like this for the first 2 weeks. Sanji gets 4 hours of sleep, rolls out of bed, preps his products for the day, goes to the market, gets home, preps ingredients, and so the cycle continues. In the 3rd week, Sanji wakes up to a disembodied mouth popping out of his pillow. Any other S screamed. Maybe considered whether they had finally lost their marbles and gone insane, but Sanji is the chef of a pirate crew as wild as the sea herself, and he knows the curve of Robin's lips. "Sanji," she says, her voice a sweet melody to his ears after so long. "Starting tomorrow I will have a box of millet dangos included with your regular shipment of produce. Whenever one of Kaido's gifters come by your stall, please pass them a dango alongside their order. On the house, of course." The mouth curves into a smirk, promptly disappearing in a shower of flower petals. Sanji sits on his bed for a good minute before he shakes his head and goes about his day. Sure enough, there is a small box of dango nestled on top of a head of cabbage. The scrap of paper pinned to it is the recipe for chocolate pudding he had asked his pen pal for. When he pops the lid open, nothing about the dango seems off. And, well, if Robin-chan wants him to give away free food, who is he to deny her? Ebisu town is a rundown little village, and while the smiles on their faces are perpetually wide and their laughter rings out even late into the night, Chopper spends his days in a place that reeks of death and despair. Underneath the warm glow of its people, Ebisu town is a festering wound. So Chopper stays there, keeping his head in the medical books that he has brought with him from both the Sunny's expansive library and the Polar Tang's carefully curated medical section. Every smile that he passes in the street, every child running their hands through his fur with squealing laughter makes him break out in bouts of sweat. None of the people here are happy, and yet they can't even cry about it. Chopper spends days and nights poring over every test result and begging for new blood samples from the people who can spare it. "I'll cure you one day," he promises, as he takes another vial from a mother and child who walked into the hut that Chopper has been borrowing. "And soon you won't have to eat smile fruits to survive." He promises, and with each passing day the light in their eyes grows fainter. They are kind, far beyond what most people in their position would ever be to a talking reindeer who just walked in one day, claiming to be a doctor, but he has no doubt that Luffy and the rest of their crew will fix this. Zoro stops by as well, towing a tied up, laughing, hysterical pirate behind him. "If anyone can fix him, it's you," he says, and pats Chopper's fur. Then he is off again, a blue-haired man 2 steps ahead of him, guiding him towards the path towards the capital. Chopper stares, shakes his head, and admits killer to his growing list of patients. The first ray of hope for success doesn't come from a medical trial, but in the form of another doctor stumbling into Ebisu town, rubbing the back of his head and unseating the awful wig that someone has slapped onto his head. "Long time no see, Yui," says Marco. His shirt is buttoned all the way up despite the roaring heat of the midday sun, but Chopper can tell it is him by his scent. Warm firelight, dew on grass, and the sterile perfume of alcohol clinging to his skin. Chopper walks up to him, amidst the children clamoring and clinging to Marco's pants as he brings a sack of bread and fruit with him. His blue nose bumps against the hip of the man who taught him it was okay to be both man and animal. "Your antlers have grown since I saw you last." Marco pats him on the head, through his hat, but Chopper feels it all the same. "I hear you've been looking into a cure for the smile fruits. Robin thought you might be able to use a pair of fresh eyes and hands until it's time for us to move on to the next part of the plan, Yui. Between the lingering flu, the recent outbreak of chickenpox, and the constant pumping of stomachs from when the children get so thirsty that they can't help but nearly drown themselves in contaminated water." "Please," says Chopper, and for once does nothing to stifle a yawn that racks his entire body. There is no point in pretending to be invincible in front of his older brother. That would be really nice. Before Robin leaves, she pulls Nami aside under the guise of girl talk. A concept so ridiculous that it really should incite more suspicion instead of lessen it. But it sends Kinemon into a blushing, stuttering mess, and then the 2 Straw Hats are alone. "If anyone can throw them off the scent, it's you," Robin says, fanning herself in the humid air in a corner of Curry Castle. Her eyes are on Kanjuro. Always on Kanjuro, and Nami bites the inside of her cheek. "You trust me with this?" Her teeth are chattering in the cold evening air. "With the safety of Kinemon, Kiku, Shinobu and Reizu? With Momonosuke?" Nodding, Robin puts a hand on Nami's arm. Her pale skin is warm, palm-burning. "I would trust no one else with this. Luffy trusts you with this. Stay with the samurai and keep an eye on them." And that is the end of the discussion. Nami has been relegated to watching and waiting, to put a comforting hand on Momonosuke's back, and smile at Shinobu as she scrounges up enough ingredients for Reizu to throw a decent meal together. In the hollowed-out husk of what was once someone's childhood home, Nami keeps her eyes and ears on a man wearing white face paint and wielding a brush she wishes she could choke him with. Spying isn't her forte, but lying is. Staying in a hostile environment and pretending that her heart isn't clawing its way up her throat is something that she spent almost her entire childhood doing. Cat burglar is what the Navy calls her. Little navigator, mapmaker, Arlong pirate is what runs through her skull when she wakes, gasping, from nightmares clad in tangerines and the sharp teeth of a fishman. She might not be a trained spy like Robin, but spending time with Arlong and his crew taught her how to lie, and how to lie well. It taught her how to blend in, so she smiles and laughs and cracks jokes with the samurai. She helps Shinobu train, assures Kinemon that Kaido and Orochi are none the wiser of their plans, folds flyers into the late hours of night with Reizu, and discusses their Fire Festival raid plans with Kanjuro. Loudly, detailed, over and over again, and each time Kanjuro sends off a tiny, painted rat with a note strapped to its back, Nami turns a blind eye and spills more lies across her lips the next day. Every night she tucks Momonosuke in and stays with him until he falls asleep. Every night he tells her she doesn't have to, and that it is not the way of a samurai. And every night, he wakes sobbing, clinging to her. She never asks what he dreams about, because she doesn't have to. Her mind fills in the gaps itself, and she isn't sure whether getting the truth from him will make it any better or worse. An emperor looming above him, his country falling through his grasp and his people crying out for the Kazuki clan to do something. Nami hushes him and rocks him in her arms before Kinemon can wake up and make a fuss. She pats his hair, just like Nijiko did for her. She cradles him, just like Belmir once did for her beloved daughters. Pressing a kiss to his forehead, Nami vows to herself that this boy will get to grow up like a child should. Not too fast, and surrounded by people who love him. She will give him the childhood she never got to have. *******. The Oiran place is a thing of beauty. The sconces are lined with bright colors, each carved swirl and snaking dragon dipped in warm gold. Red wood looms high into the sky, towering over the men lurking in the courtyard. Some wear robes that have seen better days, torn at the edges, mended with an unsteady hand. Others merely flash a smile at the guard by the entrance, hair neatly combed and tied up. To Zoro, it reeks of disparaging people trapped in a life they never quite fully chose. His companion twirls on his feet by the swordsman's side. Tonoyasu's blue hymeth is hidden behind a green scarf tucked over his ever-smiling lips. Is she really in here? Are you sure? The unspoken in a place like this? Rings out between the two of them, standing in the shade of a cherry blossom tree. Another man waltzes up to the entrance, 2 gold coins in hand and no shoes on his feet. He brandishes the gold for only a second, and then the guard grabs him by the front of his robes and tosses him away from the entrance. The man howls as his tailbone hits the ground, coins tumbling from his hands, and another 2 men prowling the courtyard dive for the jingling gold. Zoro hums. Cracking his neck, the swordsman pushes away from the tree. Tonoyasu remains beneath the shower of falling cherry petals. The wide stretch of his cheeks does nothing to stop the man from chewing at his green scarf. The guard at the entrance huffs and puffs, his hulking form stepping in front of Zoro and preventing entry. Do you have an appointment? There is a raised eyebrow, and honestly, Zoro doesn't look that ratty, does he? For 3 o'clock. The appointment was made by Orabi, says the swordsman, pulling a bag of coins from the sleeve of his robes. I'm here to see the Oiran Kamurasaki. It sends a howl through the men gathered in the courtyard. A few cry out, others clamor closer to the entrance. Name-dropping Kamurasaki amidst her hungry and irate fans is perhaps the best thing that Zoro could have done. Get in! The guard yanks him inside as the crowd pushes closer, pounding at the doors and walls. Their shrieks are caterwauling tomcats. An older woman, her back hunched over and stooping in the face of the swordsman, brings him through the winding halls and up a staircase. All of the rooms that they pass have open doors, with plenty of Oiran and men in them. A few even have women only, but none of them are private to the extent that the upper floor is. Each room is cordoned off into sections, the Oirans inside hidden by sliding doors with intricate paper designs. Loud, raucous laughter comes from a few of the rooms, but the one at the end of the hall is dead silent. There is a shape there, legs folded underneath herself and swathed in layers and layers of robes. Please enjoy your stay. The woman stops outside the quiet room and bows, eyes on the floor. She pulls the screen doors open and scurries off. Kazuki Hiyori sits inside a room bathed in natural light. Streaks of sun flow through the open windows, kissing her hair. The slope of her shoulders is soft, collarbone peeking out from beneath mounds of finely tailored fabric. Welcome, she says, red lips parted as she leans forward and pours sake into 2 cups. You must be thirsty. Please, have a seat. A young girl rushes forward, a giggle on her lips and pink hair tickling her neck. Zoro's eyes fall on her, and not the Oiran. Small hands grab a tray as soon as Kamurasaki has put down the bottle of sake, and darts out of the room. Laughter follows in her footsteps, and she passes Zoro without a glance, tray resting on her head. Otoko. His lungs ache. The air in the room is stale and dry on his tongue. Otoko turns around and gives a brief bow. The sake bottle on the tray almost tumbles to the floor. She grabs it at the last second, fingers closing around the neck of it, and then she shuts the door behind her. She's safe, she's safe, she's safe, shaking his head. Zoro takes a seat across from Kamurasaki, leaving his swords by the door. The Oiran's smile never wavers. but her eyes glance at his 3 swords. They stay on Shisui, and she blinks. A shudder runs through Komurasaki's body. My apologies, she tucks her robes tighter around herself. The wind is quite cold today. It must be blowing in from Ringo. A lie, and yet it falls so easily from her lips. It is warm, far too warm, in fact, for the many layers on her. But Zoro merely nods and grabs the proffered cup of alcohol. Had he been one of the people blinded by her beauty, he would never have questioned it, but he takes a swig, then another. Something is building in the air, and the person outside the screen door isn't Otoko coming back with another bottle of sake. You can come in, Zoro calls to the shadow lurking on the other side. I'd like to share a drink with both of you. The man's long hair is distinct enough that he can't be mistaken for anyone else. Denjiro. Another scabbard. You caught me. Denjiro slides the door open, palms on display and a smirk on his lips. He steps in, takes a seat, and Zoro yearns for Wato's comforting weight at his side. Forgive me for stopping by, but when someone enters my establishment with 3 swords, I'm obligated to check on the well-being of my top oiran. You see, I'm a little overprotective. Zoro barks a laugh and slams his cup down on the floor. The porcelain cracks. That's putting it mildly, still, it works out in my favor. One of Denjiru's eyebrows goes up. Oh? Komurasaki makes no move to grab her drink. The walls have ears, says Zoro, draining the last bits of sake from his cup. So I'll just say this. Your brother is alive, and there is change on the way. I'm sure he'd like to see both of you again. The air might as well have actually blown in from Ringo, with the way both Denjiro and Komurasaki stiffen like ice. The oiran's face grows white, even beneath the heavy layers of pink blush dusted on her cheeks. Her red lips are twin strips of blood on a dead girl's face. What? Meet me tonight by the soba noodle cart run by Sanjuro, both you and your bodyguard here. Then I'll guarantee your safety, and your country's. How? She asks, swallowing a lump in her throat. How can you promise me something like that when my people have suffered hardship for years upon years with no end in sight? What miracle can you bring me that can suddenly make this happen now? My captain, he doesn't say, the future pirate king. Her makeup, carefully and painstakingly applied with a flourished grace that can only come from daily practice, turns lopsided on her face. It isn't a frown, because the oiran Komurasaki is never without a dainty smile on her face. But Zoro thinks this is the closest he will ever get to seeing one. So he opens his mouth and says, Wano has a beautiful, moonlit night sky, but isn't it time that you saw the radiance of dawn for yourself? In the face of her mother's prophecy, the oiran Komurasaki's mask cracks and breaks. From the splinters in the white porcelain, a young girl who thought the last of her family was lost begins to cry. Kazuki Hiyori clings to the man next to her, red lips wobbling and smearing against the blue of his robes. In return, Denjiro grabs a fistful of Hiyori's red silk and twists, until his knuckles turn white. They both cry, and Zoro lets them. He has already done his fair share of crying himself, after all. Brook is a ghost story. The whispers start in the region of Curry. There's a ghost at Curry Castle, some of the villagers say. I heard there are several, another adds. It is true in a way, Brook surmises, because his soul has an easy time slipping out of his body by now, and the samurai currently camped up at Curry Castle have technically been declared dead for the past 20 years. Brook, however, likes to move around. Go-Gho ghost. A tradesman cries in Hikumai. Haunted. We're all haunted, a man in Ringo claims to his wife, though she rolls her eyes at him. The Kazuki clan, the capital, begins saying behind cupped hands, with side eyes aimed at Orochi's people patrolling the streets. They must have come. Toki's prophecy must be true. He stays in the flower capital for the most part, even as the whispers grow and grow without him. Ringo even boasts a claim of a fox transforming into a warrior monk, and Udon's rumors include that of a man's peculiar laugh echoing from one of the prisons. Whether it be night or Brook finds, makes an excellent weapon for espionage. Especially within the confines of Orochi's mansion. You want me to make you a map of the Shogun's place? One of Brook's violin strings snap. The twang of it echoing through the small house on the outskirts of Amagasa village. Luffy-san's brothers are here, and Sabo is the one to pat a cushion next to him and make the skeleton take a seat. Robin peeks out the window, shutters pulled aside and gazing out at the young girl, laughing, as Luffy-san's freckled brother tosses her high into the air. It is the only sound in the village, aside from the murmurs of a smattering of heart pirates. And to Brook it is by far the most haunted location he has stepped foot in yet. Yes, she says, as Sabo nods along. Aside from spreading rumors about ghosts and substantiating our claims of the 9 red scabbards returning to carry out Toki's prophecy on the day of the fire festival, we need a thorough map providing the layout of the shogun's castle. Tilting his head, the tone dial inside Brook's skull rattles. But can't Kinemon-san or one of the other samurai provide one? They must have spent an awfully long time wandering the hallways. The skin around Sabo's mouth pulls tight in a smirk. They haven't been there in 20 years. But even if the one samurai who still frequents Orochi's mansion under an assumed identity were to give us one, I doubt it will include everything. You, on the other hand, can go where no one else can, and instill just a teensy, tiny bit of extra fear. The revolutionary pinches his thumb and index finger together, one eye squinting, and leaves only a sliver of space between the pads of his fingers. Robin laughs. Maybe some of them will even die of fright. Staring at twin grins on Sabo and Robin's faces, Brook can't help but think this is why they make such good friends. They are both equally terrifying, yo-ho-ho. In the weeks prior to the fire festival, the mansion of the Shogun of Wano suffers a sudden shortage of workers. No chef, maid, or carpenter wants to step foot inside of it, for fear of suffering the ghost's ill will. None die of fright, but a few pee their pants, much to Brook's amusement. The thing is, the Oiran house isn't a bad place to work at, if you ask Sabo. All it took was a recommendation from Denjiro, some new clothes, and whoop-de-doo, Sabo had a new job. Although his white and yellow striped cotton robe is nowhere near as nice against his skin as the silk that the Oirans wear, and yes, they have let him try it on, much to the women's amusement. It doesn't require much of him. Take a guard shift at the entrance every once in a while. Toss out rowdy customers. Shake down the filthy rich for extra cash if they are drunk enough to forget about it in the morning. Not that different from his regular excursions as a revolutionary, but having an actual base of operations makes certain things a lot easier. The elderly ladies running the kitchen have learned by now that any food in Sabo's vicinity won't ever make it to the guests, and if he shows up to guard duty with an apple in his mouth, you don't ask him to share. He has been chased out of the kitchen by an angry lady with a soup ladle more times than he can count, and yet he always returns for more. People at the Oiran house are nice, and Sabo enjoys the work. It is much better than twiddling his thumbs in Amagasa village, and this way, he gets all the best gossip in town. Careful, he says, as Otoko stumbles into his legs. Don't want to spill any of that. He steadies her with a hand on her shoulder, ruffling her hair with the other. She bats him away, tilting sideways as the food-laden tray balanced in just one hand gives her too much weight on one side. Ahaha. She hops on one foot. Once, twice, and then both her hands are on the tray and the girl is standing stock-still. There is a letter perched next to a plate of pickled plums. Can you give this to the boss? I need to bring the food to the guests, but they said it was super important? Do you mean urgent? Yeah, that's the word? Sabo grabs it, but it is just a plain letter. No sender, no return address. He twirls it between two fingers. I'll make sure boss man gets it right away. He shoots her a wink and Otoko giggles. Denjiro always lurks on the rooftop at this time of day, and Sabo takes the steps 2 at a time. Sure enough, the boss is there, his skin slick with sweat and a sword in hand. The weather is still entirely too hot for exercise, but at least the breeze up here is a lot colder. He takes one look at Sabo and sheaths his sword. What? Urgent letter, says Sabo, and stays peeled close enough to the man that he can feel the heat radiating off of him. Denjiro says nothing, unfolds the paper, and only makes a cursory jab at Sabo. The revolutionary doesn't back off, instead leaning closer and reading it over the other man's shoulder. The Shogun Orochi requests the presence of the Lady Oiran Kamurasaki for a banquet to be held at his luxurious mansion. This is an honor and a privilege given to only a chosen few. Please find the date and appropriate dress code enclosed at the bottom. Your intel was right. Denjiro folds up the paper. Orochi is planning a banquet. Waggling his eyebrows, Sabo grins. So, Will the Lady Kamurasaki attend? As if there's any real choice. I've been waiting for this for a long time. There is something sharp in the air. A tinge of bloodlust and a bucket of vengeance. Sabo can't wait to give Orochi his just dessert. Straw Hat has spent the last few weeks adjusting to prison life alongside Kid. It isn't as though it takes much getting used to. There is an awful little to do, and an awful lot of posturing that needs to happen. Each new wave of inmates think themselves to be hot shit. It usually doesn't take much more than a whack of Kid's fist splitting their cheek, or Straw Hat staring them down with those wide, brown eyes of his until they all scutter off. No one says what they see when they look into Straw Hat's eyes. No one shares. Kid, too, would rather take a bullet to the face than try to explain what emotions Straw Hat's eyes invoke in him. Fear, confidence, terror. In just a few weeks, Straw Hat has as much of Udon's prisoner mind under his thumb as Kid has after months of staying here. Unlike Kid, Straw Hat doesn't ask for much of the people he puts in their place. He never demands their food tickets in exchange for keeping their measly lives, and he doesn't ever take them in as his underlings. Not that Kid does either, but he could. The only prisoner that Straw Hat bonds with, aside from his inane pestering of Kid whenever they are in their shared cell, is the old man with the goggles and the tattoos. Hell, Straw Hat gives the guy his precious food tickets willy-nilly, and it is pissing Kid off. Royally. I'm hungry, Straw Hat's stomach growls for the 5th time in 3 minutes, and Kid hopes he drops the rock he is hauling and dies under it. Kid's own belt is lined with tickets, and while he has yet to cash them in, watching Straw Hat struggle makes a grin emerge on his lipstickless face. Gizow, share with me. Another thing Kid has yet to beat out of Straw Hat, that ridiculous nickname. Hands yank at his belt, and Kid's smirk slides right off. He lifts a foot and jams it into Straw Hat's side. Nope, drop dead. The hands persist, tugging and pulling until Kid puts down the rock he has been hauling around and promptly drops it on top of Straw Hat's arms. They retreat too quickly to be caught underneath it, lucky bastard. The elderly man with the flower tattoos lumbers closer to the two of them, clutching a pebble. One hand comes up to adjust his goggles, eyes squinting. Ah, Straw Hat, you don't have to share your food with me. I'm sure I'll be just fine on my own. Waving him off with one hand close to Kid and grabs him around the waist. Oi! Kid scrambles for purchase, elbow jerking back and hitting a couple of ribs behind him. Straw Hat still doesn't let go, lifting Kid up off of his feet and hoisting him into the air. Put me down, if I had my devil fruit powers, I swear. She, don't worry about it, old man, Gizow will share with me. I think the fuck not, and so, most of Kid's days spent in prison take an odd turn like that. Straw Hat having no concept of personal space, oversharing far too much, and the old man insisting that in exchange for food tickets, he will help Straw Hat train. Somehow, that extends to dragging Kid along for the ride, and while the old man has a few screws loose. What the hell is Ryo? It at least serves as a decent enough way to pass time. Not once does Straw Hat attempt a jailbreak, and how the idiotic pirate has any hope of taking down Kaido from inside a prison cell. Kid has no clue. Instead of trying to escape, he eats his own weight in kibidango each night, starts petty fights with Kid for the fun of it, and spits in the face of the guards when they make their usual rounds. Life is not good, necessarily. But Kid is alive and breathing, and that is a good fucking start. It is a status quo. As much as a person can have one when existing within the confines of a prison run by a piece of shit emperor and a snotty shogun. That status quo gets thoroughly wrecked on a peaceful Tuesday, when Straw Hat suddenly stops hauling his rocks around. The guards barely have time to blink before Straw Hat grabs old man Hyugoro by his neckerchief and tugs him over to where Kid is hauling around his own bunch of rocks. Gizow. What? Sweat is dripping down his body. The Udon sun high in the sky and relentlessly unforgiving in the harsh Wano climate. Kid's tongue is sandpaper dry, and his mouth itself could probably use an entire bucket of water. Every word forcing itself across his lips tears at his vocal cords. Straw Hat smacks the chunk of rock out of Kid's hands. Ready to get out of here? Kid putting his life into those kibidango stealing, dirty mitts of his is probably equivalent to a death sentence. So Kid says as much. Absolutely great. The steel doors at Udon prisoner mine are blown off their hinges. One of them warps and melts under the searing flames that crawl inside the courtyard, and the other is kicked into the nearby wall of stone by the man causing all of the commotion. Portgas d'Ace, 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. What the actual fuck? Flames dance along Portgas' broad shoulders, the brim of his orange cowboy hat licking and spitting small globs of fire. He tilts his head and shoots a grin in Kid, Straw Hat and Old Man Hyogoro's direction. Hey there, little brother. Want a lift out of this place? Kid's brain short-circuits, half on the fact that a Whitebeard commander is in Wano and Kaido hasn't killed him yet, and half on the little brother comment. There is too much to unpack, and then a giant, yellow dog lion saunters in through the opening, prisoners scurrying around its feet in their own bid to make a hasty escape. On the dog lion, though, is Trafalgar Law and a young girl with purple hair. The Surgeon of Death tosses a handful of pebbles into the air, standing on the head of the lion. His eyes flit from prisoner to prisoner, and then they land on Monkey D. Luffy. The scowl on his face softens, a scoff leaving his lips. Stop playing around, we have places to be, Luffy ya. Puffing out his cheeks and crossing his arms, Straw Hat's brows knit together. Boo! You're no fun, Torao. In direct contrast to his statement, the man bellows out a laugh and raises one hand to the bomb collar around his neck. The one that Queen had ordered the warden to put on Kid, Hyogoro and Straw Hat, after the latter's rather public beatdown of the All-Star. Taking it off is suicide. Then Straw Hat tightens his muscles, grabs, and pulls. The bomb collar goes off, about 20 feet away and no longer clasped around Straw Hat's neck. Flexing his fingers, Straw Hat grins and tugs on Hyogoro's collar, grabs, and tosses it. Then his hand is on Kid's neck. No, no, no. There is a breeze on his skin. The patch of it is white and pale where the rest of him is tanned from hours of toiling under the hot sun. The bomb goes off, several feet in the air, and Kid's hand comes up to touch the pale flesh of its own volition. How, in the time it takes for Kid to process just a fraction of this, a pair of keys appears at their feet. The rubber man hums and tries key after key for his sea stone handcuffs, and on his third try, they fall from his wrists. Straw Hat stretches his arm. Sure, Kid knew about his devil fruit, but hearing about it and seeing it are two very different things. Long, noodly limbs clasp around Trafalgar Law's neck, and Straw Hat slingshots straight into the older man's body. Trafalgar sways on his feet, still standing, and runs a hand through Straw Hat's sweat-stained hair. You need a shower. I need food. That too. Trafalgar rolls his eyes and raises his hand. In his other, a Nodashi blade the length of the man's entire body gleams. A blue dome envelops the prison room. Amputate. The guards and jailers go down in piles of mismatched body parts, screaming. Shambles. Something pulls at Kid, bile rising in his throat. He blinks, and where there was solid ground beneath his feet a second ago, there is now the coarse fur of a yellow dog lion. Welcome aboard, Eustace Ya. Trafalgar only spares him a glance, and Kid stands while his feet skid and try to find purchase on the moving creature. Hello. The girl, cheeks flushed and a ratty kimono on her small figure, greets him. She leans down, counts the people on top of the dog lion, and pats the fur beneath her. Everyone's here, let's go, Komachio. The dog lion takes off and Kid stumbles. As disorienting as sudden teleportation is, Kid isn't the only one going through it. There are a lot more people on here than when the Surgeon of Death and the Whitebeard's 2nd Division commander first blew a hole in Kaido's prison. Old Man Hyogoro, a couple of other prisoners with tattoos. Is that a goddamn kappa? The girl has already leapt at Straw Hat, pulling at his rubber cheeks and climbing all over the 500 million belly pirate captain. Portgas drops down beside the two of them, gathering them both in a hug, and Kid wasn't entirely sure about it when Straw Hat proposed an alliance to take down Kaido, but if these are the kinds of people he can bring to the table, then… Eustace, Captain Kid bends over, hand digging into the fur of the yellow dog lion he is currently riding on, and laughs. Huahaha, huahaha, and if a few people shoot him a weird look, then they can motherfucking stuff it. Kid is going to get killer back, and then they will rip Kaido's entire face off. Asterisk 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 Brook is the one who finds Usopp in the capital. The sniper is hunched over a crate of his infamously amazing, Totally not a scam. Toad oil jars, pouring in new product ready for tomorrow's sale. The stack of flyers next to him has steadily decreased, and by now, Usopp has to be selective about who he gives them out to. So a ghostly head suddenly popping out of the ground next to Usopp is enough to make him drop oil all over his trousers. Eep. Yo ho ho. Still hard at work, Usopp-san? His fingers are sticky now, in the way that they can only ever really be when coated in layers of melted lard and whatever else he managed to scrounge up and shove in there. He wipes them on his ruined trousers, because there is no way in the four blues that they are ever getting clean again. Is it time? He grabs the rag slung over his shoulder and dabs it to his forehead. Did Luffy get out of prison already? Nodding, the lower half of Brook's face gets swallowed. The fire festival is rapidly approaching, and Orochi has scheduled his banquet for tonight. Robin-san has requested we meet her by the harbor by sundown today. What are we telling the samurai? A routine inspection of the ships and a strategic meeting before the festival. Usopp hums, scratching at his chin. Yeah, that should do the trick. He waves Brook off, the ghostly form of his crewmate sinking into the ground with a muttered take care. Off to find the rest of the wayward Straw Hats, no doubt. It takes less than an hour for Usopp to pack up all of his belongings, and then make his way to the harbor where they anchored the Sunny all those weeks ago. The updates on the actual plan have been sporadic at best, and Usopp only managed to catch a glimpse of his fellow Straw Hats once or twice in passing. It will be nice seeing everyone again. Despite the heavy bag of ammunition he hoists onto his back, it is not the weight of it that drags him down and has his feet shuffling. It is the hand shoved into his pocket, thumb and index finger gliding over the smooth, carved seastone bullet hidden in there. If they are going tonight, if they are taking on an emperor on his home turf, then there is only one logical solution to when this bullet will be fired. In a few hours, either on the deck of the Thousand Sunny, or right before they all haul themselves onto it. In the end, the decision comes even sooner than that. Usopp waves a hand in the direction of a smattering of people lumbering about on the beach. Sunny and the Tang are bobbing in the water right off the coastline, one already half submerged and the other glowing like an iridescent, resin rainbow in the late evening sun. All of the Straw Hats are present, Usopp dumping his bag and the fake beard in the sand in favor of returning the multitude of hugs coming his way. Torao does not offer the sniper one, but he does pat him on the shoulder in passing. Momonosuke is here as well, with 7 of the 9 red scabbards. Nekomamushi and Inuarashi have finally made their way to Wano, too. Izu is introducing Marco to one of the scabbards, Kiku, if Usopp's memory serves him right. Sabo is conspicuously absent, but for all Usopp knows, he could have infiltrated Onigashima weeks ago and might be getting ready to roll out the red carpet for them when they arrive. It isn't as though Robin or Torao have shared much of the actual plan with the rest of them. Ace is toting around a small girl propped up on his hip, introducing her to anyone who is willing to listen, and when they make their way to Usopp, it isn't hard to see why. Her round cheeks puff up every time she smiles. Which is all the time, apparently, and when she introduces herself as Otama, it's nice to meet you. With such a fervent bow she nearly falls right out of Ace's arms. Usopp dies a little inside. She is far too adorable for her own good, and will apparently join them for the raid on Onigashima, judging by her presence here. Sees what the actual. The cloudy sky above them splits open from one second to the next. Worororo, twisting in on himself. Kaido looms high in the above, maw clicking open as he rains down a torrent of fire on the beach. The sand beneath their feet turns to a thin layer of glass. Ace tosses Otama to Shinobu and throws a wall of fire to stave off the worst of the blow. How did he know? How did he know? Are they all going to die here? In hindsight, it isn't hard to figure out. Of course Kanjuro would have shared even a preliminary meeting with Orochi, who would have relayed to Kaido, who might have been a slight bit peeved at the fact that Monkey D. Luffy humiliated one of his all-stars repeatedly while serving a prison sentence, before breaking out of said prison without breaking a sweat. Of course, even their best-laid plans go to shit one way or another. Kaido dives, and for a second, Usopp stops breathing. The Emperor swoops close to the ground, but pulls up at the last second. A handful of his lower-ranking men hit the sand running, crowing and mocking. They swing swords and claws, but none of them are on the level of the top officers. They are cannon fodder, distractions. The sniper's sigh of relief is abruptly cut off by the screams of a terrified Momonosuke, clutched tight in Kaido's tail. "Don't worry, I'll keep him alive until the fire festival, Straw Hat," the Emperor roars. A laugh clear in his throat as the dragon takes off towards Onigashima Island. Like they won't follow him. Like this isn't an emperor signing off on his own death warrant. Like he will ever stand a chance in the face of Monkey D. Luffy. In the chaos that follows, between beast pirates quickly being pounded into the sand-turned glass so hard that it shatters on impact, Usopp locks eyes with his captain. There are no words shared between them. There is no specific signal. Now, Luffy's haki lashes out. Now, Usopp heaves a deep breath until his chest aches from it. Crouched behind an outcrop of rocks after that first splash of Kaido's unholy fire melting the sand they were standing on, his hand goes to his pockets. It is such an innocuous little thing. No bigger than the size of a marble. Lighter than a bullet filled to the brim with gunpowder, and yet it doesn't stop it from being deadly. His hand grabs Kabuto's neck, feet sliding out, and then he pulls the string back. One fingertip holds back a small patch of leather, seastone bullet resting between his knuckles. His arms are burning. His core is a molten pit of bubbling lava. "Your observation haki can be your best asset, kiddo," his dad had said, one night aboard the Red Force. Words half slurred and cheeks flushed a drunken scarlet. "All you have to do is listen to what it tells you, and let it see for you. Eyes are all well and good, but someday, you might need to keep them closed and still hit your target. All you have to do is listen." His palm had spread wide against Usopp's chest, right above his heart. "Okay, Dad," he had said, and tried so hard to not think about when that time might come. "I'll do my best." Listen. Kinemon yelling, Reizu screaming. Ace, a burning supernova as he smothers Kaido's remaining flames with his own. Luffy's haki thrumming, "Give him back, Zoro," so close to their captain, folding over his anger like a blanket and stemming it. And the one spot where everything is quiet, glee, pride, indifference. A man who has just finished a perfect performance. Usopp closes his eyes, exhales, and lets go of Kabuto's taut string. Kanjuro crumples in the sand. His hair spreads out like a purple halo, blood blooming from his clothes. A glob of red spit drips from the corner of his mouth. The man coughs up half a lung and inhales a handful of sand. His back is on the ground, pale face gazing up towards the sky. There is a clench in his jaw that can only be unbridled fury. His eyes, two pinpricks of swirling dark, are pinned to an outcrop of rocks. There is nothing to see there, nothing to feel, unless one knows what to look for. Usopp, crouched behind the rocks, one seastone bullet short. It is not the right thing to do, Luffy knows, but it is kinder. For Kinemon, for Momo. If the truth about the shooter ever comes out, it will break the samurai's trust in the alliance. There will be no telling if Kinemon, the man who practically grew up with Kanjuro as his brother, might ever take their word for why the man had to die. Traitor, how can one ever hope to explain that their beloved brother-in-arms had sold them out from the start? So the Straw Hats keep quiet. Luffy stands over the cooling body of a man he wishes could have suffered so much more than he currently is. He broke their trust first. He hurt Momo and Kinemon, and he never, ever loved them like Luffy has come to love these people. Kanjuro's chest runs red, his hands shaking as he moans and grasps onto the front of Kinemon's robe. The fabric frays in his grip, seams splitting apart. The thread gleams a vibrant scarlet between grains of sand and shards of molten glass. "Kanjuro!" Kinemon cries, snot dripping down his face. "Kanjuro, stay with us!" He cries out for Chopper. For Torao. For Marco. For anyone to help save his friend, his family. It is the reindeer who steps forward, but when he sits down next to Kinemon, he does nothing to stem the bleeding from the man's body. "I'm sorry." Chopper shakes his head. The scabbards cry harder. "There's nothing I can do for him. He nearly killed you the last time." Luffy swallows around the words yearning to burst out. His tongue sits swollen in his mouth and his eyes burn. "He doesn't deserve your tears." His hand snakes around Zoro's wrist, clutching so hard that the swordsman must be losing the circulation in his limb. He doesn't pull away. Zoro's own fist is clenched, nails biting into the skin of his palm. The screams of the last few beast pirate stragglers are quickly smothered under Gizao's metal fist and Killer's whirling blades. Torao clears his throat. We need to go. Kaido still thinks we'll attack on the day of the fire festival. That would be the smart thing to do. Wait and recuperate our losses. But they have Momonosuke and they won't expect a counterattack this quickly. We have to go, and we have to go now. Torao cocks his head towards the polar tang bobbing in the waves, the Thousand Sunny right next to her. The lion's face is smiling, even as a trader fights for his life in the surf. Momo. A miscalculation on their part, and judging by the way Robin is chewing on her lip, she hadn't been expecting it either. It burns in Luffy's chest. A seething rage that has been steadily building, finally bubbling up and spilling over the edges of his skin. So hot and ferocious that it could melt the sea itself. Momo is his, he should never have been taken again. Kanjuro clings to Kinemon with a wet gurgle stuck in his throat. Adam's apple bobbing up and down. No words make it past his lips. A few strangled noises, a syllable, but nothing more. The man's eyes, however, stay locked on where Usopp slides out from behind a small outcrop of rocks. Kabuto slung over his shoulder and a watery frown on his face. His perfect liar, always willing to do anything for his crew. Who will let a sea stone bullet fly and weep over the man he has just condemned to death on his captain's order? Let's go. Luffy squares his shoulders. There is no grin on his face, no smile. Onigashima waits in front of them. The island is a giant, looming skull with burning eyes. It taunts him, its voice dark and damp. Can you really do it? Are you strong enough to take me? Take Kaido? As the Straw Hat Pirates fold up the mainsail, a watery bubble of rainbow resin covering them as they disappear below the ocean's waves, Luffy finally smiles. The polar tang whirs beside them, clicking as the churning sea proves to be no obstacle for them. An itch beneath Luffy's skin grows by the second, white hot and a bit like butterflies fluttering in his stomach. Try me, he tells the demon's skull, and we'll see who remains standing. The water lapping at the coast of Onigashima Island splits. From its dark depths, a ship with the head of a lion crests the waves. A yellow submarine right on her tail. The trek there is nothing short of perilous, and maybe if it was the first time Luffy had made the trip, he would be clutching at Sunny's mast just as tightly as Nami, Usopp and Chopper are currently doing. But this isn't his first trip, and just like last time, Momo is missing. Anchored beneath a rocky outcrop, the Alliance makes their way onto a grassy patch of land. The earth below their feet tremble and the air is loud with the cries of people in a drunken stupor. The dull vibration of a Worororo sends jolts up Luffy's legs. Is everyone up to speed about their individual missions? Torao, always with a clear head and one hand fisting the back of Luffy's robe, casts a sweeping gaze over all of them. All of them have jobs and things to do. But Luffy stopped listening after Zoro had rubbed a thumb over the back of his hand and told him, "Just focus on Kaido. The rest of us will deal with everything else." Their alliance is weirder this time around. Bigger. Maybe not in terms of numbers, but in power. Whitebeard pirates, Ace. The Heart Pirates, 6 of the 9 red scabbards, the dog guy and cat guy from Zou, Gizao and his laughing first mate, and Luffy's own crew. It isn't a fleet of rebelling samurai, it is so much better. Zoro grabs his swords, unsheathing all 3, and Kinemon falls to his knees. Is that? He licks his lips, eyes wide. One shaky hand manages to point in the direction of Zoro's new sword. Luffy knows it. Saw what kind of things, what kind of people, it was capable of cutting a lifetime ago. The vibrant purple scabbard and the haki singing from the blade itself is as feral as Zoro's smirk. Enma. Back in the hand of her wielder, as she should be. "Yeah," says Zoro. "I got it from Hiyori in exchange for returning Shisui. Robin picked it up for me, but I've been looking forward to using it." "Oh yeah, they never told the samurai about Momo's sister, did they?" Well, Robin probably decided not to tell them, and the face Kinemon is pulling right now is sufficiently funny enough to believe she made the right choice. His eyes are bugging halfway out of his skull, tongue twisted in his mouth. Then he shakes his head, grabs his own swords, and bows. "Zoro dono. Luffy dono. La dono." Thank you for helping my beloved country, even though it serves no personal gain for you. Even if we die today, our end will be honorable, and I could wish for no better comrades to fall besides. Silly Kinnaman, as if Luffy and his crew will let any of their people die today. She, we'll win, don't worry about it. Then Luffy is off, dragging a limp Torao and a struggling Gizao behind him. When he passes Zoro, his first mate gives him a brief nod. And the hockey mingling between them is victory, laughter, finally. Miles away from Onigashima, at the same time as the ships of both the Heart Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates breach the waters to challenge an emperor, another plan begins its execution. Cherry blossoms fall from the trees in the flower capital. In the warm climate, the petals stick to clothes and people alike. A ceremonial kimono, red and patterned and exquisite, carries those same cherry blossoms inside the banquet hall of Wano, Orochi. Accompanying her is a child, lips stretched wide in a smile that is far too large. Toko clutches the trail of excess cloth of the Oiran Kamurasaki. As the woman stalks forward into a lively hall, her shoes strike the floor in a clicking pattern of wood on wood, accompanied by the quick flick of a bachi against the strings of a shamisen. Kamurasaki. The shogun cries, raising a glass high in the air. The liquid inside flows over the rim, down the edge of his robes and onto the tray full of food sitting at his feet. Come. He pats an empty cushion on his left. She takes a seat, and in the dim light of the banquet hall amidst screams of delight, the Oiran can't tell whether his cheeks turn a ripe cherry red from the heat, the alcohol, or her proximity. Striking another chord, the hall falls silent. The people stop moving, eyes drawn to her as each chord strikes long and short, hard and soft, the strings bending beneath her skilled hands. Eyes wide and mouths agape, none take note of the few missed chords, or the blonde samurai at her side. Wavy hair pulled into a bun, and with a sword at his side, he chews on a stick of dango. In a glimpse of fluttering lamplight, one half of his face is pale. Sabo wears his disguise as a bodyguard well. The young, smiling girl dogs the Oiran's footsteps, a tray of refreshments in her hand. She keeps her head bowed, extending the tray to the shogun. Grabbing 2 cups of sake, each one lined with a golden trim, he throws one down his gullet straight away. Have a drink with me. I couldn't possibly, says the Oiran. It is an honor to be able to play for you tonight, Shogun. I would rather not spoil your favorite songs by being inebriated. One of his grimy hands settles on her shoulder, stroking the skin beneath it in a jagged, circular motion. With his other, he pounds down the second cup of sake, swallowing in one gulp. So proper. There's no need for such formality between the two of us. Leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets, Sabo bites through his stick of dango. Mirroring Sabo's pose, albeit with his hands stuffed into his sleeves and back ramrod straight, there is a bald man with long earlobes and sunglasses not far off. Close enough to hear the Oiran and the shogun's exchange, but not close enough to be a bother. After every glass of alcohol that Orochi consumes, the man heaves a sigh. The drinks flow easily enough between the food and handsy officials. In the sky, the sun dips towards its exit on the horizon, dripping scarlet and blindingly bright. Sabo stays near Kamurasaki, and in turn the Oiran stays seated by the shogun's side. Every flick of her bachi commands the mood of the room. From slow and soft to fast and brutal, the conversations follow the flow of her music. One string grows weak in her presence. Yet, even as it flays from the top peg, it does not give out, it does not break. Kamurasaki wields her shamisen like one might wield a weapon. She plays with a grief so sharp it may as well have been the drag of a blade across her neck. She plays with the quiet calm of a seasoned professional. She plays with the crippling pain of a childhood long lost. She plays like a ruler in anything but name. Yamato, I'm back. Otama is perched on Ace's shoulders, her chin plonked on top of his orange cowboy hat. His younger brother's sniper and skeleton. He is still not over that. What the actual hell? Luffy? Are peeking out from around a corner. Usopp's knees shake and Brook's jaw clacks. Ace glances back at them, a furrow in his brow. For seasoned pirates running with his brother of all people, they are quite the scaredy cats. At least Otama. beaming at the man pounding away at a metal statue of Kaido in his dragon form, doesn't have an ounce of distrust in her body. "Hi. Are you Ace's friend?" Ace wants to squeal, but he smothers it in a cough. The skin on his chest flushes red, the tip of his ears probably sharing the same color palette as a ripe tomato, but come on, Otama has no right being this adorable. Just like another smiling, stupid little kid that used to dog his footsteps back in Goa. Huh? Yamato turns, fist coming down, and he does nothing to stop the momentum of it. It knocks the Kaido statue's head clean off and it skids to a slow stop in front of Usopp's feet. "Ace, what are you doing here?" The grin spreading across Ace's cheeks has his freckles dancing. "I told you I was going to come back for Kaido one day. Help you out and all that. Turns out my little brother likes Wano and its people, and apparently he has a bone to pick with your dad." Yamato snorts. "That makes 2 of us. 3, says Ace, jabbing a thumb at his own chest. Then he jostles the giggling girl on his shoulders. 4, if you count this little munchkin. Barking a laugh, Yamato cracks his neck. The Kanabo leaning against the mutilated Kaido statue is as long as Ace is tall, and within the next hour, the Whitebeard commander has no doubt that it is going to be firmly planted in Kaido's face, where it rightfully belongs, obviously. Luffy ran off to fight Kaido, but he taught me a pretty cool trick. Wanna see? Ace waggles his eyebrows, and maybe Yamato has gotten too used to his antics, because the guy just rolls his eyes and steps closer. It is a little tricky to make his haki do what he wants it to, mainly because Luffy's explanation was shit. But Ace's face scrunches and Otama stops wriggling around. He puts his hands on the cuffs around Yamato's wrists, takes a breath, and pulls. They go sailing through the air and Otama claps her hands. Yamato just stares at Ace, rubbing at his wrists. "There you go." The Whitebeard pirate grins, smacking Yamato on the shoulder. He must have grown a few inches since the last time, because his hand can't even reach his collarbone now, and Ace pouts. "If you want to go and beat Kaido into the ground, now's your chance. I can't guarantee there'll be anything left once my brother is through with him." "You're not joining the fun." "Sorry," Ace laughs, patting one of Otama's legs. With his other hand, he points to the 2 straw hats hiding behind a pillar. "The 4 of us have something else we need to go and take care of." A cloud of tiny, glittering ice crystals escapes Yamato's mouth in an exhale. "All right," he says, swinging the Kanabo over his shoulder. Long, sharp canines grow and peek out from between his lips and the smirk on his face. "I'll kick his ass twice over, just for you. And once that's done, we're all sitting down and having that drink you promised. I've been dying to meet that brother of yours." "Brothers," Ace opens his mouth to say, but Yamato is already gone in a whirlwind of ice and thrashing conqueror's haki that has Usopp and Brook clinging to one another. "You're going to meet both of my brothers." Izu hasn't seen his sister in over 20 years. Sees, he has missed her. Has missed combing her hair every night before bed, tucking her in, watching her practice her swordsmanship and how both Kinemon and Odin would help correct her form and better her stance. He loves his pops, and he loves his siblings, but Kiku knows parts of him like no one else. He will burn the world for her, and he knows that she will do the same for him. Perhaps that is why it is so natural to run down the hallways of Kaido's castle, so close that their arms brush against each other at every step. Even Kiku's strides are as long as his now, and she no longer has to call out for her precious big brother to wait up. "Stop staring, or you might trip and fall." Izu faces forward, but his eyes manage to catch a glimpse of his sister through the corner of his eyes. "I can multitask just fine, Kiku." Kiku's laugh has changed, too. It is high, airy, and so different from her little grumbles or the shrieking peals that Kawamatsu would get for tickling her, back when she was young enough why back rides. Kiku is a grown woman now, and Izu doesn't quite know what to do with that. He shakes his head and grabs the butt of his guns just a tad tighter. His leather gloves are smooth against the calloused skin of his palms, but the weight of his pistols is a small comfort. The arm sliding against his own is covered in armor, slender hands folded around the hilt of a katana. The mask perched on the side of Kiku's face is a grinning, snarling demon. A door ahead of them is blown right off its hinges. A woman steps out, a mask over her face. The white horns nestled in her blue hair are glinting. She slaps a fist into the palm of her hand. Well, Well, what do we have here? A pair of little rats in Kaido's castle. We should punch them into the ground and bring their heads back to him as a gift, right Pepe? A guy follows behind her, his head tilted low and his shoulders hunched up to his ears. Ugh, I guess so, sis. Izu and Kiku slide to a stop, 20 feet away from them. Ulti and page 1, without a doubt. 2 Tabiropo. Siblings. Oden's enemies. Ulti rears back her fist and jams it into page 1's shoulder. Come on, Pepe. Where's your spirit? Let's tear them apart and show Kaido how much he can rely on us. Rubbing his shoulder, page 1 sighs. Yeah, whatever. Izu glances at Kiku. Her feet are spread out, katana poised high, and gosh darn it, she really is grown, isn't she? I'll run point. You provide cover for me. Kiku's feet slap against the floorboards, covering the distance between them and the Tabiropo in half a second, flat. Hey, you little. Izu fires off a shot that grazes Ulti's cheek before she can slam a fist into Kiku's back. I'm the oldest, shouldn't you be listening to me? Perhaps a bit too busy dealing with 2 of Kaido's top officers up close and personal, Kiku shows her back to Izu without deigning a response. Not once does she glance at him, but she doesn't have to. Watch my back, she says, not so much in words as she does with her actions. Let's show them what Oden's people can do. Grinning, Izu licks his lips. There has to be lipstick on his teeth at this point, with how wide he is smiling. The air tastes of gunpowder, and shells litter the ground at his feet. Kiku darts through the openings of her opponents, slashing, cutting, drawing both blood and infuriated screeches from the woman. The 2 of them are siblings, for sure. Every time page 1 takes a hit, Ulti loses half of her mind and goes in for a blind punch or forehead smash. What they lack is trust. Something that he and Kiku have in spades. Kiku takes a bite to the shoulder, wincing. She tilts to the left, an opening created by page 1. Shuffling forward, Ulti leans in, and Izu sees it. A straight line, a clear shot. Not to Ulti, but to page 1. Izu levels his gun to page 1's head and pulls the trigger. The dinosaur rears back, eyes wide. Empty. Ulti's screech is as loud as her brother's lifeless body hitting the ground. No, she lurches for Izu. In her rage, Ulti doesn't stop to consider the opponent in front of her. Kiku runs her sword through the woman. I'm sorry, she says. But this is for Oden. For Momonosuke and Hiyori. For the people of Wano. I truly am sorry that your blood will have to pay for the crimes of your captain. Slumping to the ground, a puddle of red blooms around Ulti. She gasps, gargling blood and staining the white fabric of her mask. The crease in her brow eases. Gaze turning away from Izu and Kiku looming above her, and instead, her shaking hands find her brother beside her. She clutches him tight. Ulti exhales and her grip on page 1 goes slack. Kneeling, Kiku closes their eyes and mumbles a prayer under her breath. Wiping a pearl of blood from his brow, Izu reloads his guns. What did you pray for? For them to be reborn as siblings again. If we had died, I would have hoped they might have done the same for us. Asterisk 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 Nami, Jinbei, Kinemon, Shinobu and Reizu sprint through the winding halls and corridors of Kaido's castle. I can't let you pass, says Who's Who, lounging on a platform sticking out of the wall. He jumps down, but his feet make no noise as he lands. A cigarette hanging from his lips gives off a faint, red glow reminiscent of sparking embers. He spits it out and stomps it beneath his boot. You came here for the brat, didn't you? So quick to enter the lion's den. You must be desperate. Although it's not like any of you will survive for much longer even if I do let you pass. The kid is having a nice chat with Kaido 4 doors down on the right. I'm sure that if you listen closely, you can hear him squealing. A vein on Kinemon's forehead jumps. He rushes forward, both swords unsheathed and flames licking at the blades. Huzu leaps out of the way, twisting in the air as his body morphs and gives way to a saber-toothed tiger on 2 legs. Nami bites her lip. Jinbei's palms come up in a defensive stance, but if Momo is suffering at the hands of an emperor, they can't waste time here. Go. Nami cracks her knuckles. The staff strapped to her thigh is a heavy weight in her hand when she unfolds it, brandishing it like an extension of her own body. Both ends of it gleam a muddled gray in the low light, a thin layer of sea stone coating it. Jinbei, Take the others and go already. I'll be fine, I'm just going to have a few words with the kitty cat and then I'll catch up. Nodding, Jimbei pulls Kinnaman out of the room by the back of his robes, the samurai hissing and spitting the entire way. Shinobu and Reizu linger, but Nami cocks her head and they take off. Who lets them leave? He chuffs, fangs catching on his lips. You think you can beat me on your own, little girl? There is a purr to his words and a shiver rolls down Nami's spine. He splits the floor in two with a punch. His claws scrape against the walls. It is all marine tactics. Shave, Shigen, ironclad body. Punch, bite, claw. This, Nami can work with. A story spills across Usu's lips as the fight drags on. As the little girl drenches him with water and strikes with thunder. As she burns off patches of his fur with a jab of her sea stone-covered staff. It goes a bit like this. A desire for revenge, a ship plundered by the red hair pirates, a stolen fruit, and a god in human skin. Hiding, biding his time. The terror of every celestial dragon and a threat towards all that they stand for. Nami knows just as surely as the sun rises each morning, that Usu's story is true. Because how else would her idiotic, lovable, ridiculous captain find a way back to them from a broken future, if not by virtue of defying all odds by merely existing? It is a pity that his story does nothing to deter the Straw Hat Navigator from attacking. She can barely catch her breath by the end of it, but it is Nami who stands above Usu, fingers dripping with blood after she runs them through his body. They ache, each knuckle and joint smarting from the strain of using her own Shigen technique. She wipes her nose with the back of her hand, chest heaving. Usu caterwauls once the sharp edge of her heel grinds against his bruised ribs. They call me the cat burglar, she tells him. But maybe I should ask them to change it. Cat killer might be more appropriate after today. You see, I don't really enjoy fighting, but I have no particular love for people who threaten my captain. She crouches down, hand running through spots of patchy fur where it gives way to splotchy black and blue skin. I have no reservations about hurting someone who thinks threatening my crew, my captain, my family, is a good idea. Luffy is going to be the Pirate King, and there is not a damn thing you can do about it. Her clothes are ruined. Torn, stained and ripped into long ribbons. Grabbing one particularly long slit of split fabric down the side of her LF against Usu's sternum. It sizzles, skin bubbling around the sea stone. And look what you did to my clothes, you mangy tomcat. I hope you know that I'll be charging you for it. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Excuse me, Brooke's skeleton face pops out of a wall. The child walking down the hallway. Despite the eerie mask on their face and relatively high rank considering the beast pirates parting like an ocean before them, cannot be mistaken for anything but a child. Which means that the thought of stabbing them with his sword or encasing them in ice makes Brooke's non-existent heart clench in his skinless chest. Excuse me, he calls again, when the kid keeps walking despite several beast pirates gasping and gaping at the floating skull. You're the one capable of projecting their voice, yes? Perhaps the kid isn't seeing him, considering the painted paper covering their face. So Brooke raises one cold, transparent skeleton finger and taps the kid on the shoulder. They jerk back, balled fists tucked against their chest. Not that a fist is going to be able to do much against an incorporeal mass of bones. Go GHO ghost. The kid cries, fist swinging into empty air and refusing to catch on what would have been Brooke's empty eye socket. Be gone from here, you monster, help. The kid's screaming grows in volume, and Brooke doesn't need cartilage and functioning eardrums to tell him that, yes, this is indeed the kid they need to get a hold of. Half of their garbled ranting is being broadcast to the majority of Onigashima Island. So Brooke takes a deep breath and blinks away a light film of green from his eyes, and when he opens them again, he is hanging upside down over somebody's shoulder. There is nothing quite like the feeling of being lugged around like a sack of potatoes. Usopp-san, you can put me down now. Their sniper tosses him to the ground with a shriek. If it wasn't already so mighty jarring for Brooke to go from being a detached soul and back into a somewhat functioning body, he might have taken offense. As it is, Brooke dusts off his fallen hat and grabs his sword. Otama is perched on Ace's shoulder, and Brooke points a finger directly upwards. 2 floors above us, slightly to the left. He has barely finished his sentence before the Whitebeard pirate grins and hands Otama over to Usopp. With one hand, he shoots a swirling plume of flames up in the air. It pelts through Brooke's recommended 2 floors, and then some. The man's legs give way to a swath of fire. He grabs Otama again, and then the freckled man is gone, barreling upwards. The commotion is enough to draw the attention of the 20 closest beast pirates, who all come barreling around the corner and glance at them, then the hole in the ceiling, and then back to the 2 straw hats. "Hello," Brooke bows. "Pardon the intrusion. Some of them have animal features, a giraffe neck here, a gorilla head for hands there. One even has the lower body of a horse." Brooke takes one look at her before asking, "Excuse me, may I see your panties?" The nice horse lady promptly turns around and lands a kick to Brooke's head. The hairline fracture it gives him is probably what Nami-san would have called, justly earned, but before Brooke can stand back up, she is going in for a second stomp. Usopp is knee-deep in a rather unfortunate hand-to-hand brawl between himself and a fellow with a scorpion's body. The speakers throughout the mansion crackle back to life, but instead of the masked kid's voice, it is Otama's. The feedback is enough to make several of the gifters wince. "This is Otama speaking. To all of my friends, please help the people fighting Kaido and his pirates." One of the waiters next to the horse lady, leather mask pulled over his face, laughs until there are tears coming out of his eyes. What sort of friends does she think she's calling on? What a delusional little bye. "Of course, master." The horse lady redirects her hoof towards the waiter. He goes down coughing, a bruise in the shape of a horseshoe on his forehead. "Anything for you, master." The gifters in the crowd give crows of agreement, calling out for their benevolent and kind-hearted master. Usopp sneaks closer to Brooke, sporting a bloody nose. Getting back on his feet, Brooke puts away his sword and grabs his electric guitar instead. The skeleton strums it as beast pirates start fighting amongst each other. "I think this calls for some appropriate background music, don't you think so, Usopp-san?" The sniper gives a thumbs up, shoving wads of tissue paper up his nostrils. Brooke runs a riff and hits a power chord. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Robin's priority is the poneglyph. She had asked her captain, submerged aboard a coated sunny in the churning waters lapping at Onigashima Island, whether she might find a poneglyph somewhere around Kaido's castle. "Probably," he had said, shrugging his shoulders. "But I don't know where. You and Torao looked at it last time. I was too busy partying." She had laughed, one hand covering her mouth. Her fingers had itched for him, so she had pulled her beloved captain into a hug, pressing her lips against his forehead. "Never change, Luffy," she said, when he giggled under her ministrations. In hindsight, she should have pressed for actual directions. The thought of relying on her time-traveling captain did rub her the wrong way just a bit, but staring down to Tabiropo, it would have saved her a whole lot of trouble, wouldn't it? "Sorry to disturb you." Robin slides one foot back, leaning all her weight on it and drawing her hands up. "I imagine you might be quite busy with this sudden invasion, but do either of you care to tell me where I might find Kaido's poneglyph?" One of the 2 Tabiropo, the woman, takes a drag of her pipe and exhales a plume of smoke. She tilts her head, and the smile on her lips is a carefully curated expression. Robin does not miss the way her brows twitch for the slightest of seconds. Black Maria, if Robin has gotten the right intel, towers above the other Tabiropo, so high that the 2 swords in her blonde hair nearly scrape against the ceiling. Her silken kimono slips off her shoulders, revealing skin. "Nico Robin," says the other Tabiropo, the man, barely reaching the height of his companion's knee. "Devil child. I do so loathe that moniker." Robin smiles. "I prefer Nico Robin of the Straw Hat Pirates. It has a much nicer ring to it, don't you think so, Red Flag, Drake?" Any other pirate might have found themselves sweating quite heavily, if they were to stand where Nico Robin stands, without backup and 2 Tabiropos staring her down in a rather narrow hallway on enemy territory. One might even think her beyond saving. However, Nico Robin spent 2 years as a revolutionary, digging through every archive at Baltigo. Mission reports, news articles from the Four Blues, and even correspondence between high-ranking Marines. One such correspondence just so happened to detail the activities of something called Sword. "Care to join my side for a moment, Drake? In a few hours, Onigashima will fall and my captain will claim Wano as his territory. If you want to continue with your work, joining us would be in your best interest. She won't win this battle with her fists, but maybe words will do. Drake stiffens, fingertips giving way to sharp claws and green scales. A muscle in his jaw spasms, and next to him, Black Maria throws her head back and laughs. Ahahaha. A small-time rookie like yourself, thinking you can make a Tabiropo turn on his emperor. What a joke. She runs a hand through her hair, tucking a blonde lock behind one ear. What do you have that we don't? Her legs multiply, from 2 pale, flesh legs to 8, black tarantula legs. Black Maria darts forward, and the floorboards where Robin stood a mere second ago is reduced to a pile of jutting, crumbled wood. Robin jumps back, one eye on Maria. She Drake. Foolish, one might say, but the correspondence letter detailing Sword's activities had included more than just Drake's name. Kobe had been written there as well, and Robin has no doubt that Luffy's friend must have spoken warmly about her captain. So it comes as no surprise to Robin when an Allosaurus wearing a hat crashes against Black Maria's unguarded side. The woman goes down shrieking, the claws of her former ally digging into her skin and drawing blood. What? It makes for quite the picture. A giant tarantula woman pressed into the ground, and an Allosaurus wearing ill-fitting clothes standing on her back. Robin stands next to the 2 Tabiropo and glances up, into the dark eyes of ex-Drake. His maw drips with red saliva, each strand scattering drops as they hit the floor. If I hadn't attacked her first, you would have outed me as a spy, wouldn't you? Indeed. I suppose you won't be telling me how you knew. Robin keeps a wide smile on her face, flicking open her fan and hiding behind it. She blinks at ex-Drake. The dinosaur huffs, his footing unstable as 6 of Black Maria's legs scramble out from beneath her body while she jerks and bucks. Fine. He growls, each one of his scarlet-tinged teeth the size of Robin's forearm. Keep your secrets. Devil. Drake goes sailing through the air. Black Maria rising from the floor, skin flushed and hair askew. A hiss slips out from between her gritted teeth. Traitor. She screeches and lunges. Nico Robin holds out her hands, fingers falling into the familiar pattern of Sabo's dragon claw grip. Armament hockey thrums beneath her skin. There is an ally, a dinosaur breathing down the back of her neck, a foe ahead of her. The odds might not have been in her favor when the fight began, but she quite likes her odds of winning now. After 15 minutes of Kamurasaki playing, the fraying string snaps. It flicks against her fingertip, a whip-quick snake biting its own master. The cut, barely the size of a rice grain, drips red blood. Please excuse me while I attend to this. She bows her head to the shogun, already gathering the overflowing fabric of her robes as she makes to stand up. A hand on her wrist prevents her from getting any further. The skin is rough and calloused, and Orochi tugs her back down onto the cushion. Stay, his voice is low. A damp breath against the shell of her ear. You, Kamurasaki's servant, bring me some bandages, now. Toko pelts through the crowd, her tray of drinks forgotten in the corner. Orochi holds Kamurasaki's hand in his, lips pressing against her flesh. A roll of gauze and a bottle of disinfectant are deposited at their feet a moment later. Orochi's fingers drip tiny droplets of sweat while he covers her cut with cotton strips. You need to be more careful. It would be a shame for you to get blood on your clothes. You are right, she says, flexing her wrapped finger. It is not too tight, not too loose. She can keep playing like this, one string short. As a thank you, would you accept a gift? A gift from you? Always. Orochi claps his hands. Flaky bits of skin pulled taut over his cheekbones flutter to the floor. His teeth are set in a square grin. A wave of her hand is all it takes for Toko to dart off again, returning with a new tray in her hands. Instead of drinks, a cup of something dark and jiggly sits there, a spoon plunged into its depth. Nestled on top are a few scattered white flowers. What is this? Stifling a giggle behind her hand, Kamurasaki picks up the cup. It is considered a delicacy on other islands. A dessert called chocolate pudding. I wanted to save it for a special occasion, but since you have shown me such kindness, I must insist that you try it. I can think of no better way to thank you. The cup is cool to the touch. So is the spoon. The bald man, the one with the earlobes, finally pushes away from the wall. His hand reaches for the chocolate pudding. Shogun, I think it might be unwise too. No, Kamurasaki brought this for me, it's mine, but. I said no, keep your mouth shut or I'll have Kaido remove your head from your shoulders. The man shuffles back towards the wall, and if Kamurasaki hadn't been expecting it, she might have missed it. The second his back touches the wall, her own bodyguard clamps a hand over the man's mouth and jabs at his neck. Whatever cry leaving him remains unheard. In the festive mood, between the hollering and the sharp tang of alcohol, Sabo leans in and takes most of the man's weight, as though he is supporting a friend who has had a tad too much to drink. It doesn't look out of place, even as Kamurasaki makes a calculated effort to not look in their direction. For all she knows, behind those dreary sunglasses, the man might be having a splendid, intellectually engaging conversation with the blonde man propping him up. Orochi, for what it is worth, appears none the wiser to his subordinate's sudden plight. What did you call this? Chocolate? Kamurasaki smiles. Chocolate pudding. How does it taste? Digging into it, the spoon comes away greasy and bathed in sugary sweetness. The shogun laps it up. Oh, Kamurasaki, this is delicious. He sticks his entire mouth into the cup, licking the sides, the spoon, the speck of chocolate on the back of his hand. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope that it would be to your taste. Yes, it tastes wonder. The execution of the Shogun Orochi starts as a surprisingly simple affair. Luffy's chef is undoubtedly in a league of his own, and armed with the recipe of one Charlotte pudding, it is an easy thing to scatter a few flowers on top. To even the well-trained eye, it is an innocent use of Queen Anne's lace flowers, an edible, medicinal herb. For people like pudding, the scribbled margins of her own recipe calls for a mix of poisonous water hemlock and Queen Anne's lace. They do both look terrible alike, after all, mixed in with dark chocolate and whipped cream. It is not enough to kill a man like Kurozumi Orochi, but it inhibits him just enough. What's the matter? Kamurasaki plucks at the remaining strings of her shamisen, Bachi hitting a note. Is the delicacy not to your liking, great shogun? A dusting of purple, burst capillaries and red skin sits high on the man's cheek. It stretches over the bridge of his nose and the veins in his throat turn a pale, pulsing blue. No doubt the respiratory issues have started setting in. Leaning close, Kamurasaki abandons the shamisen in favor of the folded fan resting at her hip. A flick of her wrist and the delicate rice paper unfolds in front of her face. Waving it at the shogun, she provides him a brief moment of cold air in the stale, warm banquet hall. Orochi wheezes. Oh no, poor dear. Feeling rather faint, her head tilts onto his shoulder. A few stray strands of blue hair coming undone, splaying out against the paling skin of the shogun. The fan in her hand snaps out again, hiding their faces. Kamurasaki, lips a bleeding red, whispers in his ear. I'd imagine so, considering all the poison you just ingested. A noise leaves Orochi. A mournful howl ending with the squealing of a pig. Grabbing the Oiran by the throat, he pulls her close, teeth snapping in front of her face. Kamurasaki smiles through the strangling grip on her neck. Her left hand touches her cheek, and blue hair gives way to short, cropped black. Cheekbones grow impossibly higher in the time it takes for the shogun to blink. A hand lets go of a neck, and a man in Kamurasaki's robe swoons against Orochi. You're rather ugly up close, y'all, no. Bon Clay raises a hand to Orochi's unclothed chest, two fingers walking a thin line from the man's navel to his Adam's apple. A fabulous surprise, wasn't it? Strachan's chef isn't much for adding poisons, but Charlotte Pudding reassured him that this one wouldn't interfere. Still wasn't much for it, but when he heard it was for you, he made a moral exception. Bon Clay flicks the tip of his finger against Orochi's sniveling nose. In the low light of the banquet hall, hidden behind a paper fan, one might mistake their closeness for something indecent. Between the sounds of raunchy laughter and loud merrymaking, there is little help for a dying man to get hold of. Least of all his ninjas. A choked gasp leaves his mouth and Bon Clay shushes him, an index finger to the shogun's rapidly cooling, pale lips. No, 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 sweetheart. None of that. My companion would like a word, if you'd be so kind as to give him a moment. How do you do? Sabo plops down on the only pillow available on Orochi's other side. One hand grips the shogun's shoulder so hard that it creaks. I'm here to talk to you about a revolution. and whether you'd be willing to consider conceding to the rightful heir without a fight? Orochi's face twists, bloodshot eyes popping from his skull. It seems like a nice concession of power won't be in their cards after all. Bon Clay hoists Toko under one arm and makes a beeline for the window. Ready, little missy? Ahaha. Toss me. She giggles into his arm with unfiltered snickers and snorts. He winds back and throws her out the window. Sailing through the air, her giggles never stop. Not even when a pair of arms wraps around her middle to catch her. Daddy. A blue-haired man, with a grin as wide as his daughter's own, nestles Toko against his hip and waves at Bon Clay. The Okama sends them both off with a thumbs up. Thanks for letting us borrow her, she did great. We'll take care of the rest. Father and daughter dart off into the night, underneath a blanket of stars and a symphony of screams to come. Bon Clay stays in the warm, stifling banquet hall, licking his lips. There are ninjas to deal with and a gate to open. It would be quite rude of him to make the rebelling samurai outside wait any longer than they already have. This isn't exactly Sanji's ideal version of a party. Granted, the people enjoying Queen's music and the atmosphere of the live floor on Onigashima Island probably did have a good time before the Straw Hats crashed through one of the buildings. Sanji has already smoked through half a pack of cigarettes in the last 10 minutes, but Zoro took one look at Queen floundering on the brightly lit stage and decided to unleash hell. 3 swords and about 20 destroyed buildings worth of hell, that is. So much for a sneak attack, but oh well, streaks of bright, blue flames dart past a group of beast pirates. Although their hands are already full with the sudden rebelling gifters. There is a guy with a lion head embedded in his stomach, and while the sight itself is enough to make him shudder, the lion head sends a wink Sanji's way and leans in to bite off the arm of one of Kaido's goons. Absurd, but useful. At this rate, Sanji will have to make a proper dessert spread to thank Otama for services well rendered. Even with the gifters on their side, there are entirely too many people crowding the live floor, and Sanji has kicked out the teeth of at least 40 people so far. It has barely made a dent in their numbers. A diable hombi to the jaw sends goon number 41 sprawling to the floor. Damn it, why couldn't more of them have eaten devil fruits? You know, I found myself asking the same thing. In any other instance, more zone users would be useful. Queen lumbers down the stage. The mic in his hand is still on and sends a piercing shriek of feedback through the speakers when he taps a nail against it. But not right now. Although, it's not like these pleasures and waiters are managing to do anything to you, are they? He lobs the microphone into the crowd, striking one of his own people right in the head. The woman's knees give out beneath her body, and Sanji dives in to catch her. Her head doesn't hit the floor, and her chest is going up and down in a droll, unsteady pattern as she lies in Sanji's arms. Hey, at least be nice to the women, would you? The cigarette between Sanji's lips snaps in half and ash trickles to the floor. There are armbands there, all proudly spelling out Queen, with little hearts sewn into them. Flags, banners, homemade signs by his own fans. No need to throw a hissy fit just because someone crashed your concert. Queen barks a laugh, throwing his head back. His neck grows a pasty yellow, elongating, until the weight of a brachiosaurus breaks the flooring beneath him. That's what I dislike about all of you straw hats. Always so infuriating. Not an ounce of showmanship in any of you, not you, not the little reindeer, your swordsman, and especially your idiotic captain. Insulting the moss head is quite understandable, says Sanji, darting a glance over to where Marco and Zoro are fully engrossed in their own brawl with Kane. But bad-mouthing our beloved doctor, my captain? He puts the lady in his arms down on the ground. Black leg Sanji lifts one leg and a roaring fire bursts from it. Shucking a cigarette from his rapidly diminishing pack, he leans in and lights it, drawing a quick puff. Brave of you, Sanji spits out his cigarette. To insult the future pirate king in front of his chef, and think you can get away with your life intact. And who's going to put me into the ground? You. The brachiosaurus leans down, nostrils flaring and snorting in the blonde chef's face. Behind his dark glasses, beady eyes flick to Sanji's curly eyebrow. I doubt Judge's failed experiment. Back when Zoro had taken him on that road trip, just the two of them, the swordsman had walked out of a building with a signed comic book and a black can. He had kept the comic book, but the can had found its way into Sanji's hands eventually. Just in case you feel like trying it on. One day, the moss head shrugged. Sanji kicked him out of the kitchen, but kept the can on him. It is burning a hole in his suit now. The last remnant of Judge's hold on him, and maybe it would be wise to use it. To let Stealth Black show his face against one of Kaido's all-stars, but Sanji doesn't need it. It's no wonder Judge faked your death, he must have been so disappointed. He pulls the can out and crushes it beneath his shoe. It cracks, metal splitting apart. I think you need to stop thinking about Vinsmoke Judge, and start thinking about whether you're going to be alive after tonight. The number 3 is nothing more than bits of broken chalk under his heel. A past life. Stealth Black isn't needed here. Vinsmoke Sanji isn't needed for this fight, either. Sanji is. Black Leg Sanji of the Straw Hat Pirates. It is about damn time everyone else started calling him by his rightful moniker. Asterisk 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 had it been Sasaki, and only Sasaki, that Frankie ran into, then yeah, maybe he could have dealt with the Tabiropo fairly quickly by his own standards. But Sasaki, a squadron of roughly 100 goons that haven't been turned by Otama's powers, as well as Jack the Drought? Yeah, no, Frankie is not having a good time. Neither is Killer or Ashura Doji. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi are positively peeved at the thought of facing Jack again, switching between growling and hissing whenever the man gets too close to them. At this rate, Momonosuke's rescue party number 2 will spend the rest of this raid stuck in a room that they had accidentally stumbled into, which just so happened to be the cozy nook containing Sasaki and Jack's own party. Granted, Jack the Drought looks a bit like a mummy, wrapped in all those bandages still. The Straw Hats really did a number on the guy back on Zou, and even though Frankie knows by now that letting the All-Star go was ultimately for their benefit, and to royally piss Kaido off, at the moment it sure doesn't feel like it was a good idea. In fact, Jack the Drought takes one look at Frankie, and turns into a mammoth. Why super, he dodges a tusk coming his way. Then a fairly flexible trunk, then stomping hooves. Honestly, could the guy just not, for like a second? Does anyone have any good ideas? Ashura Doji grunts and swings his sword down in an arc. It takes care of 4 goons in one go, but 6 more take their place. Likewise, Killer's blades whirl on his arms, but they do nothing more than provide Jack with an exceptionally bad trim all over his furry body. But oh, aren't those just marvelous pieces of tech? Frankie is so asking for a closer look once they aren't fighting for their lives. Fa fa fa. I'm used to reining in my captain and dealing with the aftermath. I'm not usually fow. Not usually the one coming up with the harebrained ideas. The blades make another cut, 2 inches deeper than last time, but what falls from Jack's body is clumps of frizzy fur and the dirty ends of bandages that really should have been changed, like yesterday. Sasaki takes 5 steps back, spurring his suicidal team of loyal goons into rushing forward with all the grace of a slice of lemmings about to confidently go over a cliff. Frankie knocks together 2 heads and tosses the limp bodies towards another approaching mob. Is there no end to these guys? There isn't any water here either. It sucks to be on dry land after having spent the majority of his life in a city floating on water, 2 years on the seafloor with his uncle, and traveled the ocean on a ship made for the man who will become the Pirate King. This place is too dry for a cyborg capable of fishman karate, who very well can't use his lasers for fear of hitting an integral, structural beam or an ally hiding behind the walls. Damn it, could he use his cola? No, he'd be all out of juice afterwards, and there is no telling whether these goons are going to turn tail and run as soon as their officers are down. Arg. Frankie pauses, one hand gripping the strands of his mussed hair. A goon takes a pot shot, firing a bullet right into Frankie's oversized metal shoulders. It hits, bounces, and flies straight back into the man's head. Wait, they crashed a party. A pirate party. His hand slips over the button of his nose, and his hair reshapes itself into a light bulb. Inuarashi. He calls over the din of screaming beast pirates. Any chance you guys can sniff out any barrels with alcohol nearby? The mink stops, sword halfway through skewering an unlucky sod. Of course, he barks, and grabs Nekomamushi's scruff. Let's go, you old barncat. Who you calling a barncat, you tail-chasing mutt? In less than 2 minutes, the 2 minks have rolled 5 barrels of sake towards Frankie's feet, and there is a grin stretching over the shipwright's lips. Good, these will do just fine. Most likely there is sake in them, and Frankie can work with that. 80% of it is bound to be water. This one goes out to the 3 princes at Fishman Island, who taught me how to throw a super party. Frankie squares his shoulders and throws back his hips. Fishman karate secret technique. Mighty reliant piercing. The barrels of alcohol burst. The water gurgles, pliant in his hands, and Frankie shoots a liquid shock wave that pierces through Jack the Drought's body. The mammoth's wrinkled skin ripples. His eyes pop, tilting onto his back, soft stomach exposed. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi descend on Kaido's all-star with teeth and claws, singing steel and flaming bullets. Sasaki, on all fours and looking remarkably well put together for a triceratops, quickly reverts back into the shape of a man when Frankie turns towards him. Looks like the tides have turned in our favor. That's pretty super. Slamming his forearms together, Frankie's distraction lasts long enough for Ashura Doji and Killer to jump over the masses of expendable goons and bury their blades into the soft flesh of a human Tabiropo. Ah, they really should get back to looking for Momo, shouldn't they? Kinemon throws open a set of wide, carved double doors. Momonosuke-sama. The boy in question huddles against the wall furthest from their small party. Looming over him is Kaido, a towering, hulking beast of a man. More so now than when Jinbei had seen him take up half the sky in the form of a curling, twisting dragon at a Kobor town. Kinemon, the boy cries. Worororo. Kaido steps forward, Kanabo resting on his shoulder. His eyes skim over the samurai, even as Kinemon rushes forward and slips between the man's leg. The samurai crouches over Momonosuke, putting himself between the emperor and his charge. Kaido smiles at Jinbei. I was surprised, the emperor grins, one side of his mouth quirking up. When I heard that a warlord was willing to give up his position for a rookie crew. Tell me, first son of the sea, Jinbei, how did Monkey D. Luffy lure you in? And Jinbei doesn't have the words to describe it. Because it should be odd that the first mate of a pirate crew, one who has never before set foot in Wano, knows a scabbard's alias. It should be odd that the captain sometimes talks about people they haven't met yet, as though they are his best friends. Jinbei might not have traveled with the Straw Hats for long, but even he knows something is off about them. Nothing bad, but the feeling one might get when they look at a picture of a friend from the wrong angle, and it takes a few seconds before the face makes sense. That was what it had been like to meet Luffy-kun for the first time, deep beneath the waves and in the presence of good old man Whitebeard. The golden rays of light on Fishman Island have never managed to warm his skin quite the same way that Luffy-kun's presence seems to do. Maybe you'll see for yourself today, Jinbei offers instead, because those words have an easier time leaving his mouth. Luffy-kun is special. I have no doubt that he will be the man to take up Roger's legacy. Oh, is that so? He didn't seem like much when I beat him to a bloody pulp at a Kobor town and threw him in prison. It is an insult that won't stand. Jinbei throws his whole weight into his arabesque brick fist, and the fight begins. In reality, Jinbei knows they don't stand a chance. An injured child in need of guarding, and 3 people against an emperor with a burning death wish. It is not a fight they will win. But Luffy is within the castle as well. His captain will come soon, and when he does, Jinbei has no doubt that Kaido will be the one put into the ground. When he tastes blood in his mouth, one eye closed from a cut above one of his brows and at least 3 cracked ribs, Jinbei still does not doubt his captain. Kinemon is on the ground, Shinobu and Reizu both shielding Momonosuke to the best of their capabilities, but Jinbei knows that it won't be enough. They need backup, and Luffy the wall on Jinbei's right gets demolished between one blink and the next. The person stepping through the crumbling wreckage is not Luffy. Kaido. Someone roars, their figure tall and imposing, swinging a kanabo much like Kaido's own. I challenge you to a duel. The dust clears and Jinbei falls to his knees, breathing hard. Perhaps no longer deeming him a threat, Kaido turns towards the newcomer. Yamato, my stupid son, can't you see that I'm busy? Then you best look forward to being even busier. Kaido's son enters the room with a clap of thunder and frost on his breath. It takes Jinbei no more than a second to realize that there is no love lost between father and son. His pleas for backup have been answered in the form of the emperor's own child turning against him. Jinbei wrenches his bruised mouth open, half a thank you already on his lips. But then Yamato jumps around Kaido, yanks Momonosuke up in the air, and throws him out the 4th-story window. Momonosuke-sama. Reizu jumps after the boy, quickly followed by Shinobu. Jinbei heaves a sigh, tucks a battered and blur his arm, and jumps out of the window before he can get caught up even further in whatever insanity runs in Kaido's bloodline. The live floor is a melting pot of too many scents and sounds for Chopper to make heads or tails off. He darts between gifters, bandaging where he can and setting bones when able. Sharp antlers pierce the skin of frantic pleasures and waiters all aiming their weapons at him. It should be scary, but Ace, Brook and Usopp have found their way to the live floor as well, carrying Otama with them. Sanji is here. Zoro is here. Marco is here. Chopper isn't alone. Will never be alone again. Not like those dark days in the snow, before Hirulik and Dr. Kureha. Before he knew the warmth of his siblings on the Moby. Before Luffy and their family. He heals just as many wounds as he dishes out. In hindsight, bringing as many medical supplies as possible was the right call. Not only are the clashes between gifters and waiters an incredibly violent and bloody affair, Torao and Robin had warned them about Queen, too. Poison, they told the reindeer and the chef. Toxins, nerve damage, plagues. For now, the few loose rounds of poison bullets that Sanji dodges ends up slamming against the ground and exploding in cloudy bursts. It is nothing that Chopper hasn't treated before, but each time the All-Star pulls out a new weapon, or swings his head straight at Sanji, Chopper's heart dances in his throat. They have all prepared for this, Chopper knows. The 2 years they spent apart as a crew hasn't been for naught, and Sanji has been an excellent help since he took up reading medical texts in his spare time. It still does little to quell the anxiety welling up inside of him. His dry tongue swipes against the inside of his cheek, but there is no moisture to be found. His fur is damp, coated in sweat and blood and other fluids he would rather not waste another moment thinking about. Let's see you try dodging this one. Queen rears back his head, and something tiny pops out of his mouth. Sanji jumps aside, the round object grazing the skin of his brow. It doesn't explode like the other poison rounds. It's a rather new virus invention of mine, but I've been dying to try it out on a live audience. I call it Ice Oni. Squinting, Chopper's eyes follow the trajectory of the small bullet. It might be blue, or even white, and then it hits a gifter in the side and burrows itself deep into the man's gut. Arg. It covers the victim's skin in ice and enhances their physical abilities. Granted, they'll be freezing their asses off, slowly losing their mental faculties, and most likely die within the hour, but the data I can get from this trial will be invaluable. But if it is just one bullet round at a time, Chopper frowns and tilts his head. Sanji can stall Queen for a bit longer if necessary, so it should leave his hooves free to start preparing countermeasures and possible treatment options for the screaming man, half covered in ice and with horns protruding from his skull, grabs onto one of the other gifters. The woman shrieks, yanking her arm out of his grasp. On her skin is a thin layer of ice, transparent blue veins spreading over her body. Oh, I forgot about the best part. Queen grins, reptile skin stretching and showing off his white, blood teeth. It's highly contagious. Touch it and see for yourself, muhahaha. Above Sanji's brow, where the bullet made brief contact with his unprotected skin, a thin strip of ice emerges. Chopper roars. A low bellow that makes his flanks quiver, and then it grows and grows and grows. The reindeer, too, grows until his form towers just as high as Queen's own. Opening his mouth, Chopper's howl becomes a deafening boom. Flexing his fingers, his monster point form is as familiar as a pair of beloved gloves on calloused hands. Perhaps, in another time, Queen might have stood a chance. But to garner the attention of black-legged Sanji and Raging Bull Chopper? To poison his own people, and laugh at such an abhorrent display of the medical sciences? Queen will be dead within the hour. Torao and Gizao throw the doors open, chests heaving from their wild sprint throughout Kaido's mansion. Torao has the map for this place, but Kaido isn't in his room, nor the banquet hall, nor the hot springs. It is all empty, and Luffy's blood is crawling beneath his skin. The roof, he says. He'll be on the roof. Gizao frowns, lips pulling into a semblance of a scowl. His metal arm whirs and creaks, fist clenching. Why the hell would he be on the roof? Luffy can't explain. His observation haki isn't picking up on anything useful, least of all Kaido. There are too many people gathered in this place, too many voices, most of them screaming, crying, help us. Clicking his tongue, Torao takes one look at Luffy. His eyes are crystalline glass reflecting the dim light of Onigashima, and his fingers are clenching too tight around the string of his straw hat. Kaido had laughed at him, at his dream and his people, and decided Luffy wasn't even worth it until. Okay, says Torao, making Gizao squawk. He winds his hands around each of their arms. You don't have to explain, Luffy ya. It's as good of a bet as anywhere else at this point. Torao, who has seen too much and lived for far longer than he ever thought he would, gives Luffy such a small, gentle smile that the knot in the captain's chest unravels into a non-existent piece of red string. No longer tangled or choking. There is just Torao's hand on Luffy's arm and Gizao's spluttered screech. In a flash of blue, they are on the roof. It shouldn't be a surprise, finding Kaido here. Still, Luffy can't stop it from showing on his face. His jaw falls open, and it isn't because of the Emperor clad in purple scales. Half-human face twisted in a snarl and Kanabo held firm in his grip. No, it is the sight of the man fighting him that causes Luffy's steps to falter and his breath to come out in short bursts. Yamato. Whole, healthy, furious. Not lying still on the ground, holding Momo tight to his chest just 3 months after Kaido's defeat, neither of them breathing. About time, he calls, eyes daring to leave Kaido for nary a second and flicker to the 3 newcomers. They take in his straw hat, and then the man grins and swings his kanabo against his father's, the metal groaning. You're Ace's brother Luffy, right? He told me you were coming. His face is half the snout of a canine. Frost clinging to his skin. A cut on his arm drips red blood into the dirt atop the demon's skull. Luffy is so tired of other people hurting those that are his. Kaido. The ensuing gum-gum Gatling gun that rains down on the Emperor is the go-ahead for Torao and Gizao. They both jump into action, one with a sword lugged over his shoulder, and the other with smeared lipstick and bits of sharp metal. Luffy punches, kicks, bites whatever part of Kaido he can get his grubby mitts on. Often enough, he draws blood. Small bursts of Conqueror's haki laces his fist. Ryo lurks both beneath his own skin, as well as Gizao's. Every shock from Torao stuns Kaido for 0.1 second less than it did before, but it gives Yamato enough time to club his father over the head with his spiked kanabo. A piece of skin gets stuck on it. Blood trickles down from his browline, and Kaido roars. Enough, the sky quivers, and all 4 of them tremble. It isn't even for a second, but it is far too long in the face of an emperor. A clenched fist around Gizao's head is all it takes for Kaido to smash him into the ground and begin squeezing. The tail protruding from underneath the hem of the Emperor's purple, fuzzy cloak, slams against Luffy first and sends him sprawling. Then it veers around and hits Torao's stomach, tossing the surgeon into Yamato. They both tumble down in a heap of tangled limbs. Torao's arm is bent at an odd angle, a hint of something white peeking of torn fabric. Yamato hisses, and Luffy has enough experience with Zoro being a dumbass to know what a pair of cracked ribs can make someone sound like. Gizao isn't getting up either. His chest is stuttering, flesh arms scratching at Kaido's hand. In return for the feudal welts on his skin, the Emperor presses him further into the dirt and something cracks. The red-haired man's hand falls to his side. The blood from Gizao's head glints ruby in the sunlight, but his chest gives weak spasms as the man draws in pitiful amounts of air. Kaido wipes his hand on his cloak. A quick lash of the Emperor's tail stirs up a cloud of dust. Did you really think the 3 of you and my unruly son would be enough to take me down? What a foolish generation of pirates that paradise has spat out. Maybe I should turn all of you into the Marines. I could use your bounties to pay for the damages you've caused, though I doubt you'd be enough to cover it, Wororo. Luffy lies on his back, the sun high above him and the rays of it are tendrils of fire. A tear inside the skin of his cheek is bleeding iron onto his tongue and there is dust in his eyes. Kaido stands above him, blocking his view of the sun. That's not right, he thinks. Not so cocky now, are you? By the end of the day, the only one alive out of you 4 will be my own son. Ah, But what should I do with him? Seems like someone removed his cuffs, so those'll have to go back on. Maybe I should invest in some more, or lock him back in that cave until he gets his head back on right. A bit of starvation. He kicks Luffy while he talks. A foot right in the ribs, over and over again. His kanabo drags against the dirt, and the Emperor lifts it back into his hands, turning it over as he peers down at the pirate captain by his feet. Luffy can't help it, he laughs. Spiked metal rakes across his face and Luffy laughs. Another foot, this time with haki, plants itself into his side and Luffy laughs. Kaido leans in and grabs him by the throat, and still Luffy laughs. Loud guffaws that have tears dripping from his eyes. Luffy yaw, he can barely hear Torao's voice over the sound of his own laughter. When Luffy turns his head and the brim of his straw hat gets squashed beneath his craned neck, the surgeon is staring at him with wide, wild eyes. Maybe it is all of the blood coating Luffy's face, or the uncontrollable laughter, but Torao's haki screams fear fear fear. Which is silly, because Luffy has never felt better. Kaido is staring at him. Why are you laughing, you brat? What's so funny about all of this? Another punch, this time right in the sternum, but there is no haki behind it, and so it merely bounces off of his rubber skin. Luffy laughs again, because stopping isn't an option. Why aren't you laughing? She, don't you hear the drums? Asterisk 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 in the thrashing of limbs. One head becomes 8. Skin gives way to scales, and despite the hemlock making its way through Orochi's system, the man attempts to stand. He sways, all 16 eyelids blinking and blinking and blinking, unable to focus on a single person. Fools! Rasps the shogun, dragging out the S with a flickering tongue or 3. I'll kill you, what have you done to Kamarasa? Of the 8 heads, Sabo crushes 7 of them. The last one he grabs by the throat and slams into the polished floorboards. Thin, needle-sharp teeth cut through the snake's own tongue. Thick rivers of red spill from his mouth, and Sabo stays kneeling on the ground, the edge of his robes stained an impossible ruby. Gaw! Words, or what Sabo assumes are meant to be words, leaves the snake man's clenched mouth. They make little sense, garbled and lost somewhere between the pink spittle frothing from his mouth and the tight hold of Sabo's hands on the shogun's slippery neck. The armament haki in his fingers recedes just enough for Orochi to squirm for half a second. The sounds that leave his mouth no longer resemble any sort of coherent words. They are hissing noises, loud grunts, and salty tears and thin cuts on his skin. I wouldn't move, if I were you. The shogun does anyway, either because he is stupid, or because he is afraid that these next few minutes will be his last. Both are correct assessments, in Sabo's opinion. The blonde shoves a kneecap into Orochi's neck. You see, Sabo leans in. The difference between a hydra and an 8-headed snake is quite simple. If you cut the head off of a hydra, another 2 will appear. However, I've destroyed 7 of your heads, and none have multiplied. So, that tells me that this is your last head, and if I crush that, you won't be coming back to cause more grief for this country. The banquet hall is swathed in the screams of Orochi's men. The cockroaches hiding behind furniture and women are being rounded up. Whatever alcohol had been in the cups of corrupt officials have long since spilled onto the floor. Orochi wriggles, and Sabo lets him gulp down a lungful of air. Wait, I can give you gold, money, women. Sabo grew up with 2 brothers who both wore their hearts on their sleeves. Even if his freckled twin might deny it to the day he dies. Sabo doesn't remember much, still, but this he knows for a fact, and somehow that kindness has not rubbed off on Sabo. He has seen too much suffering. Too many starving children. Too many foolish kings who thought themselves above the needs of their own people. Too many rulers who thought they could bargain their way out of a fate that was always going to come for them in the end. Orochi is not the first to offer him riches in exchange for his own life. He won't be the last, either. And like every other time, past, present and future, Sabo simply says, "No thanks," and finishes the job. There is snake blood all over his nice robes, his hands, and a splatter of it on his cheek. He wipes it with the back of his hands and stretches his back. It pops. Or maybe that is the sound of sandals against wood as the rebelling samurai round up the last of Orochi's somewhat loyal men. He passes both Denjiro and Kawamatsu in the hallways, flanking the actual Kamarasaki between them. Bon is shouting ballet phrases from 2 floors down, and almost by chance, Sabo stumbles upon a Kurozumi-gun nestled in the corner. The man is whispering into the receiver of a Den Den Mushi, clutching the poor thing so hard that its eyes are nearly popping out of its head. "Please, help us, invaders have killed the shogun, send backup immediately." "Oh no, we can't have that." Sabo smiles as the man whips around, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. "Besides, I doubt anyone will be answering your call, except to maybe ask you for backup. They're a little preoccupied at Onigashima right now." The snail rings and rings, and after a handful of seconds, someone on the other end picks up. The man lets out a strangled breath, eyes flicking from Sabo and down to the snail in his hands. From the speaker, someone cries out. Bloody and gurgled and undoubtedly dead within seconds. There are screams. Some of them are accompanied by scrambled words. Others are just an incoherent stream of noise that tapers off. "Help!" Someone cries over the line. The Den Den Mushi is suddenly sporting a head wound, and its eyes sparkle with unshed tears. "Send the Shogun's ninja to Onigashima, the Straw Hats." The line goes dead. The goon looks at Sabo. Without prompting, the man hands over the snail and joins the long line of Orochi's hogtied men huddled in the hallway. A handful of Kazuki samurai stand guard, and their eyebrows reach their hairlines when the goon hunkers down inside the group with nary a whimper. He grabs a bundle of ropes from one of the guards, tying them around his own hands with his teeth. Sabo can't wipe the smile off of his face. What a neat fellow. There is something incredibly satisfying about slicing up one of Kaido's all-stars. The battle is raging all around, and Zoro nightfall. Very few of Onigashima's buildings will still be standing. It partially comes with the territory of being a straw hat pirate. Their propensity for chaos and general folly in the face of adversity is a rumor that has grown wildly out of proportion, and yet Zoro can do little to counter it. Case in point. Marco the Phoenix launching Zoro high into the air of the enclosed dome, the talons on his feet nicking at the swordsman's clothes but little else. The cuts and bruises on his skin are few, mainly from some unfortunate run-ins with rooftops whenever King decided that Zoro's trajectory looked better going down rather than up. Not that he can blame the man. King of the Beast Pirates is remarkably worse for wear, compared to the swordsman. One of Zoro's blades nicks tight, black leather and skin. Enma doesn't quite bite down hard enough, and when the swordsman takes another plummet downwards, heading for the hastily approaching ground, there is no blood lining his blade. King gives a shriek, flapping his wings. The roaring fire cascading down the man's back hisses and sputters in the warm, dry air. It gives out, just for a moment, and Zoro can't help the smirk on his lips. A pair of burning, bright talons latch onto the swordsman's shoulder and tugs him back up high. "You up for another go?" Marco's beak clicks, thin tongue darting out, and yet no mouth is needed to form the words. Zoro hears him anyway, however improbable, because devil fruits defy logic on a level he has long since given up on trying to understand. Launch me, though, it isn't like this is any more improbable than half of the shit that Luffy gets up to on a regular day. Getting tossed around in the air between a mythical bird and a dinosaur like some sort of scuffed dog toy really isn't that far off brand for the Straw Hats. Marco pivots, twirls, then punts him across the live floor once again. Even sailing through the air like a limp sock, Enma's grip on Zoro is just as tight as Zoro's grip is on Enma. Cut, slash, tear, for Odin for Odin for Odin. Trusting the bird to catch him is getting easier with time, and none of Zoro's muscles are crying out in dismay, other than the arm that Enma has claimed ownership of. Considering the first time he faced King, the second time has resulted in far less injuries for the swordsman. King, in return, is drawing hard breaths through his long beak. He flaps once, twice, and the third beat of his wings comes a second later than it did a few minutes ago. The flames on his back dim. Something on the roof bangs against it with a shockwave that has the buildings inside the enclosed dome shaking. They quiver and fret, tiles falling to the ground and shattering on impact. Sanji, sorting out their medical inventory right next to an unconscious queen, cranes his neck skyward. The cigarette stuffed between his lips paints a thin line of gray in the air. Darting between the injured below and Sanji's little makeshift nurse station, Chopper jumps and drops the roll of bandages in his hooves, fur fluffing out. What's going on up there? He can't see them, but somewhere below, Ace, Brook, Usopp and Otama look up. Marco turns his gaze skyward and watches the roof above their heads, wings barely beating hard enough to keep him airborne. His talons catch on the hem of Zoro's clothes, but the phoenix pays him no attention. Maybe he can feel it, too. The slight prickle of pressure in the air. The sea outside crashing against the coastline, reaching out her watery hands for something that she has missed for centuries. The earth shudders like it has finally taken its first breath in over 800 years. Zoro does not take his eyes off of Kane. The swordsman blinks, and there are specks of gold in his eye. His ears ring. His heart beats in his throat. A familiar rhythm that belonged to a man who lived a lifetime ago, and who still lives now. Zoro knows it is time. He jabs an elbow at Marco, and the phoenix launches him. Asura sword drawing. Jest of the dead. One head becomes 3, 2 hands become 6, 3 swords become 9. They cut through King's neck in the span of a dying man's breath. They sing beneath his hands, a hymn meant for his ears only. Enma's satisfaction, Kitetsu's fury, Wato's quiet, calm confidence. The fleeting touch of Kuina's hands over his, guiding him. The lifeless body of King drops, wings clipped, and hits the ground just as the Emperor's demise begins one floor above them. Zoro falls through the air, earrings whipping at his skin, laughing so hard he can barely breathe. Shandora's bell chimes in his ears and there is light behind his eyelids. Golden notes kiss his mouth, and miles away, an elephant roars a greeting to an old friend. Asterisk 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 there's a warmth at Luffy's back. Something burning and bright that sizzles at his skin until it reaches inside of him and caresses his broken, white bones. Nika, it says. Nika. The ground beneath him disappears, and the smeared red and brown on his hands is suddenly gone. In a blink, the bloodied dirt becomes the tough skin of an elephant, and the stoic earth gives way to the swaying gait of a giant stalking the grand line with a civilization on their back. Nika, the voice says again. Welcome back. It is a greeting bouncing around inside of his skull. It is the voice of an elephant stalking the waters of the New World, waiting for so long and calling for him. By a name that was once his. By the title his name became. By a word in a tongue so long forgotten, that only the sea herself now speaks it in the depths of her darkest waters. It is the weight of 800 years of history and a void century pressing down on his shoulders, down, 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 until the ground of Onigashima Island can no longer hold him, and the only way for him to breathe is to go up. It is the flashes of Haki below him, his people, his brothers, his crew. It is Torao and Gizao, looking up at him floating in the sky, clouds snaking around his arms and feet, a grin on his face and a belly-deep laugh echoing throughout the heavens. It is the golden bell of Shandora, far, far away, ringing to the same beat pounding away inside of his chest. It is so loud that Luffy's ears pop and his bones crack. His chest spasms with every beat of the drums. Dondototo, Dondototo, Dondoto Kaido's kanabo slips from his hand and hits the ground. Even from his high vantage point, Luffy sees the way the man's mouth falls open. You, says the Emperor, and then he grins. I have been waiting for you. After all these years, we finally meet, Joy Boy. The man sheds the last of his human skin, each thread of hardwired muscle in his body giving way to sleek blue scales and roaring, orange flames spitting from his maw. Between each exhale of fire, the Emperor laughs and laughs and laughs. Luffy is going to wreck him. Shishishi, Torao, you should grab Gizao and Yamato and get out of here, because I'm gonna mess up the roof a bit, hee. He clutches at his stomach, tears dripping from the corner of his eyes and rolling down his cheeks. For a moment, neither Yamato nor Torao make any move to leave. Gizao is pale, and he blinks the white from his eyes, looking up. His gaze is still rolling from the concussion Kaido gave him earlier. His lips move. What the fuck? Torao flickers into existence next to the other pirate captain. One of his arms is slung over Yamato's shoulder, and the height difference between the two of them is enough to send Luffy into another laughing fit. The surgeon grabs the redhead by his neck and squeezes. This is Luffy Ya's fight now. We've done our part. Torao, amazing, smart, wonderful, his, casts one last glance up at the boy in the sky, a smile stretching across his lips. I'll leave it to you. A blue dome envelops the three of them, and with a flick of Torao's hand, they are gone. It is just Kaido and Luffy on the roof now. An emperor and a bow it was, and always will be. Let's go, Kaido, Worororo. Bring it on, Joy Boy. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. In the late hours of what should have been a joyous banquet, the Shogun Orochi's grip on the flower capital falls. Courtesy of a chocolate pudding. Some very pissed off natives and 2 revolutionaries. Kurozumi's sympathizers are weeded out and locked up, guarded by an older generation of samurai who remember the bygone days of the prior shogun. There are consequences to every decision, and when a man is boiled alive in view of the public, it causes ripples, some of suppression, some of anguish. Others become a silent, burning fury fermenting in that very same wad of oil until one day it bubbles over and spills. Today, the boiling pot of Odin finished simmering. The citizens awake in the early hours of dawn, rising with a scarlet sun just as quickly as their daily routine starts. It stops. The palace flies the flags of the Kazuki clan once more. None of Kurozumi Orochi's men walk the streets. They stumbled to the grounds beneath the palace in droves, muttering, mumbling, hoping. There is a man on the balcony, with a wide smile on his face. His blue hair is a fluffy ball of porcupine quills. Tonoyasu, some of the youngsters whisper. Shimotsuki Yasui, the older people correct. Next to the former Hakumai daimyo is a woman. She stands with her hands clasped together and sunlight at her back. Her hair is wreathed in a halo of golden rays. A goddess. A ghost. A familiar face. The mumbles get louder, the cries more frantic. They turn to one another, pointing and gasping. An old man steps forward, legs jittery, his wrinkled hands wound tightly around a cane. Kazuki Toki. He cries out, falling to his knees. The crowd hushes. No, her voice carries throughout the palace grounds. She takes a deep breath, feels it all the way into her stomach. The fabric around her chest rises and the embroidered crane on her left breast takes flight. I am Kazuki Hiyori. Daughter of Kazuki Oden and Kazuki Toki. Sister of Kazuki Momonosuke. Kurozumi Orochi lies dead in the palace, and no more shall you suffer by his hands. A cherry petal flutters to the ground, rosy pink and untouched. In the silence, it is a gunshot. From this day onwards, the country of Wano shall be governed by the Kazuki clan once more. Hiyori grabs the fabric of her kimono, gathers it into her hands and sweeps it beneath her. In one smooth move, she kowtows. Forehead pressed against the back of her hands. Her smooth palms lie flat on cold wood still damp with night dew. If you will allow me to guide you towards an era of peace and prosperity, I ask that you accept me, Kazuki Hiyori, as the new shogun of Wano. She stays in the kowtow, eyes squeezed shut, and tries to breathe through her mouth. The air is metallic with blood, mixed with the sweetness of new cherry blossoms buds just beginning to bloom. Don't cry, she tells herself. There is nothing more to cry about. Be strong now, for your people. Her painted lips touch lacquered wood. She dares not look up. Look, says Denjiro, a warm, broad hand settling on her back. Every point of contact between them is a furnace on her skin, even through layers of cloth, and Hiyori fights back a sob. It proves a futile effort. As tears drip from her flushed cheeks, she looks up. The people of Wano cry with her. A mother hoists her child onto her shoulders. Please, the little girl calls, a torn, paper pinwheel clutched in one hand. Please be our shogun. Snot runs from her button nose and she wipes it away on the worn-out, coarse sleeve of her clothes. Shogun Kazuki Hiyori, a man shouts, and the people of Wano call out for her. Shogun, Shogun, Shogun. Stifling a sob behind her hand, Hiyori glances back at Yasui standing tall at her shoulder. At Denjiro just behind her, on her left. 2 steps back on her right is Kawamatsu, just as he has been from the day she was born. Through the blood of her parents, the ever-present hunger, and the suffering of her people. Thank you, she says, bowing to them. Worrying at her bottom lip, she bites through the red of her lipstick and it smears against her teeth. Ahaha. You have something right there. Toko tugs on her robes and Hiyori bends down. Is that so? The girl takes a handkerchief from her pocket. Smile wide, dabbing the cloth against white teeth. The red smear disappears. It does nothing to stem her tears. "Thank you, Toko," says Hiyori, patting her head, fingers combing through fine, pink hair. "Thank you," she mouths, dipping her head towards the blonde-haired man lurking in a thin sliver of shadows at the very edge of the balcony door. Sabo smiles, tipping his top hat. He turns, and Hiyori has no doubt that the man and his friend, the Okama, will be making their way towards Onigashima. Kaido lies in the dirt, curled up like a child and bleeding from his mouth. His cracked teeth pierce the skin of his gums, and his breathing is nothing more than thin, wispy gasps of desperate air. "I waited a long time for you." Luffy sits next to him, cross-legged and glowing a blinding white. They are both bathed in the glow of the morning sun peeking over the horizon. The blood, the sweat, the dirt smeared on their skin glitters like scattered pieces of amber. Motes of dust turn into tiny, sparkling pearls in the last sliver of starlight as the moon heads off to bed, taking the night sky with it. Kaido is dying. Luffy, Nika, Joy Boy has never been more alive. "It was a good fight. I had fun." Luffy grins, one hand propped against his cheek. Kaido gives one final puff of air. A mighty small exhale for a man of his stature, and to Luffy, it sounds like a laugh. Like a thank you. "I had fun too." So Luffy laughs some more. His hair falls down, white to gray to black. The breeze is the only thing that makes it move now, and the giggles in his throat die down. He sits, just for a minute, and then a familiar Haki crawls through the doors to the roof and takes a seat next to him. Silver, demon. Love Luffy turns just enough to burrow his face in Zoro's chest. His fingers clutch at his swordsman's bruised skin, and when he breathes in, his nose picks up the scent of sweat, metal and the coppery tang of drying blood. A hand runs through his hair, knuckles grazing over the straw hat nestled against his throat by a piece of string that should have snapped long ago, and yet never has. "Captain," says Zoro. He doesn't elaborate, doesn't ask about the dead emperor next to them. Oden's executioner. Yamato's father. Momo's tormentor. The swordsman's own heart is beating in the rhythm of Dandototo. 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 His mouth on Luffy's is gold in the sky and the sea's current in their veins. Luffy breaks the kiss with a giggle that makes his ribs groan. "We did it, Zoro. They're alive. We're alive." She. The tears gathering at his chin taste salty on their way down, when they pass his lips, and he burrows his head into Zoro's shoulder. The crown of his head presses against the swordsman's collarbone, and his hands skim over every bit of skin that he can reach. He exists here and now, in this one moment, breathing and alive and so warm. He lets the green-haired man wrap his arms around him, and when Monkey D. Luffy falls asleep on the roof of Onigashima Island, he knows the battle is won. Wano is theirs. ******* In the crumbling ruins of what used to be an emperor's island, the strings of a violin play a soft note. Someone pounds away at a set of drums, and another has gotten their hands on a guitar. There is laughter and booze and food, there is freedom. Onigashima Island is a piece of land wrapped in the embrace of a new emperor. Brook has taken to the half-functioning stage on the live floor, and the crowd is a mix of gifters, Gizao and Killer, Whitebeards, Minks, Samurai, Heart Pirates and most of the Straw Hat crew. Nami is busy charging for the snacks that Sanji is whipping his hands full with bandages and antidotes. Frankie fiddles with the lamps on stage. A hammer in one hand and a bottle of cola in the other. There. Lights flash on. The microphone that Queen abandoned finds its way through the crowd and into Brook's hand. "Are we ready for a proper celebration?" Brook leans forwards, towards the crowd where all of them are roaring and clamoring closer to the stage. "I can't hear you. But I also don't have any ears." Yo ho ho, skull joke. The crowd gives shrieking peals of laughter as Brook taps his foot and plays the first note to Bink's sake. The homemade signs that once said Queen have been turned over, and scribbled flowers now outline block letters spelling out the name Brook instead. Gizao has his arms slung over Killer's shoulder, a flush high on his cheeks and legs wobbly beneath him. Killer sighs and rolls his eyes, but keeps his hands on his captain's waist, as they both join in the song. Usopp perches on Jinbei's shoulders, following the flow and ebb of the crowd. The fishman laughs, clapping his companion on the leg as the sniper pulls out Kabuto and a few pellets. He shoots them straight up towards the roof. Explosions of blue, pink, yellow, green, some look like flowers, others like bursting stars. Drawn away from the crowd, Robin has found a nook close to their dear chef. The remnant of a three-legged lunch table and a wobbling chair to match makes for a decent place to hunker down. It isn't much, but it holds her pot of tea stable and her cup away from drunken, staggering pirates. Tucked between Izu and Marco, Otama snores and sniffles, a blanket draped over her body. In the grip of her new uncles, sleep has found her fast and refused to let go. Izu tucks the blanket tighter around her and Marco smiles. Brook waves up the samurai, Inuarashi, Nekomamushi and Momo up onto the stage. The poor kid flusters for a moment under the stare of the crowd. It has him wiggling and twisting, and in a puff of smoke, a small, pink dragon takes Momo's place. Aw. Never one to let an opportunity pass him, Brook howls into the mic, do the worm. Momo climbs yellow clouds into the sky and does his best attempt at a shimmy. It sets the crowd off again, but the samurai, Minx and the boy himself are sporting matching grins and snorts of laughter. Up above, on the roof of Onigashima, there is another gathering of people. They sit around a bonfire, bottles and cups and mugs strewn about. Some empty, some still half full. A revolutionary. A white-beard commander. The son of Kaido. A swordsman, a surgeon, and a man who will become the Pirate King. Hey, Yama-Oh, do you want to join my crew? Luffy's smile stretches wide, eyes squinting shut. There are 4 red cups on the ground, sparkling with the remains of sake still clinging to the inside of the rims. On Luffy's left sits Toro, on his right, Zoro. There are no cups by their feet. I'm honored, but I've actually already got an offer. Oh, Sabo's eyebrows quirk up high into his hairline. In the light of the fire, they are thin strips of gold welded to his porcelain skin. From whom, I wonder, he hums and haws, index finger tapping his chin. Ace flushes bright red from the tip of his ears and down to his chest. The Whitebeards, of course. Ace already asked Pops and offered me a spot. I want to learn more about Odin and what kind of man he was. There are so many things I want to ask Pops about, and I get to see everything this world has to offer on the ship that Odin sailed on. It's going to be so cool. Tugging the brim of his orange cowboy hat further down his scorching face, Ace grumbles and hisses like a feral cat as Sabo starts slapping his own knee and choking on his own laugh. Shut it, Ace leaps at his brother, dragging the blonde man into a noogie. Toro scoffs and leans back, out of the way of the brawling men. His knee bumps against Luffy's and the contact is brief. Nothing more than a fleeting touch, and the direct opposite of Zoro's palm, resting against the small of Luffy's back. The calloused skin of his swordsman's hand radiates a warmth that creeps up his spine and curls around his heart like 1,000 scorching strings of red yarn. Yamato pays no mind to the shrieking boys rolling around and nearly nailing him in the back of the face with a stray elbow jab. He shoves them away and leans in close enough for a few loose strands of hair to be swallowed by the crackling bonfire. Oh, by the way, Luffy, I've heard that your dream is... Boom. The crowd below roars. Usopp's fireworks drown out almost everything else. Almost. Eh? Ace told you about my dream? Luffy pouts, crossing his arms. Yamato laughs. Leaning over the wrestling pair of brothers to grab another bottle of sake from their stash. Sabo knocks off Ace's hat and bites his hair. Ace, in turn, knocks his forehead against the blondes so hard that they both collapse to the ground. Grabbing the ankles of his crossed legs, the rubber man tilts his head and scrunches his nose. You don't think it's silly? Yamato pops his bottle open on the edge of a rock and takes a swig. The grin on his face is so wide that a line of alcohol spills from the corner of his mouth. It drips down the length of his throat as his golden eyes reflect twisting, dancing flames. I don't think it's silly. Quite the opposite, actually. But I'll admit I was a bit shocked when Ace told me. Actually, I probably looked a bit like those two. He points a finger at Toro and Zoro, respectively. Luffy's blinks at them, craning his neck from his surgeon to his swordsman. Both stare back at him, eyes wide and unblinking. Toro draws in a sharp breath through his teeth and the mug of alcohol in his hand slips from his grasp. It spills all over his clothes and the ground swallows up the liquid in hungry gulps, leaving behind only the froth. That's your dream? Zoro, his hockey tinged in silver, hellfire, Love snorts and leans back on one hand. He rubs circles into the skin of Luffy's back, thumb stroking over the ridge of his captain's spine. Somehow, I'm not surprised that that's your dream. It's fitting, in a way. Luffy kisses him. The swordsman tastes slightly sweet, searing warm, and like moonlight given human shape. He kisses back like they have all the time in the world. Like there are no more grains of sand in the hourglass. Like the noose around their neck is gone, burned to ashes, and from its remains, a new future awaits them. They break apart with twin laughter once Ace chucks an empty sake cup their way. Luffy's brothers are gone by the next morning. One heads for Baltigo, joined by Nekomamushi and Inuarashi, with plans to detour at Zou for as long as he can swing it before Koala tracks him down and rains hellfire on him. The other heads for a ship shaped like a whale, with a new brother and his kind of daughter by his side. The girl marvels and laughs as she dips a hand into the sparkling, blue water and several fish nibble at her fingertips. His fellow commanders help keep an eye on her, but when she looks at him with a smile and soaked sleeves, he can't help but laugh. She is family now, and she will never be alone again. By noon, Gizao jabs a thumb towards the inland of Wano, and grumbles about finding the rest of his crew before embarking on a new adventure. It is Killer who sticks a note to the back of Usopp's shirt before the two of them take off. A quick scribble, barely legible until one squints and cocks their head to the left, but there is a den number, alongside a vaguely worded truce signed by both captain and first mate of the Kid Pirates. On a beach, the samurai accept a folded Jolly Roger with a straw hat, and Momo clutches it close to his chest the entire way to the flower capital. Once there, he weeps at the sight of his sister, an adult, a fully grown woman, and mourns the loss of the childhood they never got to share. Together, they hoist up the pirogues in a gentle breeze next to the cloth carrying the crest of the Kazuki clan. By sunset, Torao takes a copy of Kaido's road poneglyph, and on the shoreline with the Polar Tang and the Thousand Sunny side by side, he pulls Luffy and Zoro into a hug. The Straw Hat captain clings to him and breathes in. They shake, all three of them. Fingers curl into fists to tug one another closer. "I'll call," says the surgeon, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I promise. I'll be there this time, once you make it to Laugh Tale, Pirate King." The space inside of Luffy's ribcage, the one that Torao has carved out for himself with his bare hands, crawled inside of and claimed in the shape of himself, is left a gaping void. It is a yawning chasm that stretches and stretches even long after the Tang has disappeared from view. Gone, on an adventure where Luffy and Zoro aren't meant to follow. The curtain closes on Wano, and the ocean of the Grand Line greets the Straw Hat Pirates like she always does. First with a storm. Then fog. Then thunder. Then silence. A calm breeze and gentle waves caress the Thousand Sunny. There is wind on Luffy's skin and sea salt on his lips. Zoro leans back against Sunny's mane, hand-carting through Luffy's hair as he lies sprawled in the swordsman's lap. He tugs at frizzy strands, picking apart tangled knots and scratching his captain's scalp until the man shudders. Each point of contact between them is breathing, here, alive. "Where to, Captain?" Luffy grins. "Onwards, of course." Both above and below deck, their crew putter about, reading, playing music, sketching, sorting herbs, downing a bottle of cola, standing tall at the helm, whipping up a batch of cookies, and tinkering with a slingshot. Somewhere on the ship, in the pocket of a liar's orange overalls, is the third and final Seastone bullet. The recipient of that bullet lives above the cover of the clouds, in a land full of men pretending to be gods. A place where the ground is perpetually stained and the cries of slaves is a lullaby for the children of false dragons. A monster lives among them, its hands plunged deep into the affairs of the blue world below. It pulls at the strings of the government until it wraps around the neck of the few good men within the navy and chokes them. It demands blood of the innocent and the guilty to be shed on its behalf. It kills any who sees it, and those who speak of it have their tongue torn from their mouths and are thrown from the edge of Marie Joy's in the dead of night. It has been there for years and years and years, but it won't be there forever. Once it is gone. Once he can step foot on Laugh Tale again alongside his whole crew, his friends, his family, then Monkey D. Luffy will worry about what comes after onwards.